So nice to have you all here on this beautiful, beautiful day. Or it was beautiful when I left early this morning to get here. Sun wasn't up, but it was looking like it was going to be pretty. Hey, how are you? Oh my gosh. I was like, who is this man?
Your hug.
How are you?
Good.
That's all right. Old friends or longtime friends. You shouldn't say old friends when you're this age. You're like, who did you just call old? Anyway. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Bread Beckers, the Fall Comfort class. This is one of my very favorite classes, I think second to the Christmas class. I look forward to it every year. I get nervous every time and get all stressed because I'm doing all new recipes typically, and so y'all just bear with me. But anybody new here to that's never been to the Bread Beckers before? Anybody never been to the Bread Beckers before? Welcome, welcome, welcome. So nice to have you. Where are you from? Canton. All right. Well, good. How about you? Marietta. Okay, so y'all are local. All right. Well, we are so glad to have you, and just want to welcome you here this morning. So my name is Sue Becker, for those of you that don't know who I am. Even some of you customers that come here and have been here before may not know exactly who I am. So we're just so excited to have you here this morning. We've got some great fall recipes. I love it when the weather gets cool, don't y'all? I mean, in the summertime, it's so hard to cook, but I think even that is God's wisdom, that we don't need these, heartier, warming foods to eat in the summertime. And I think God knew what he was doing when he had all that great salad and those greens and the cucumbers and those water-filled vegetables coming in the summertime so we could eat and enjoy those when the weather's hot. But then when the temperatures start getting cooler, we start moving into the fall produce, and we get our pumpkins and our squash and our carrots and our sweet potatoes and those things that are a little heartier. And also interesting, I just don't know why I never really thought about how those fall things, I mean, I knew it, but I didn't just ever really connect it. Isn't it interesting that those are more storable than your summer things? Summer is kind of short-lived, and fall you start getting those pumpkins and the butternut squashes and all the squashes and the sweet potatoes that can go down in the cool root cellar and really carry you through the whole fall and winter season and even into the early spring. And so it's really a short time that we need those not so stable fruits and vegetables that come in the summertime. So I just thought that was interesting. We are live streaming the class today and videotaping. So if you could take a moment to silence your cell phones. Brad, would you silence yours? And anyone else around, if y'all could just put those on a vibrate or something like that, that would be great. In the case of an emergency, which we don't foresee them, haven't had one yet, but you just never know, through these curtains here and here behind me on each side are exit doors. If you just go out there, this one's to the left, or would be your right that way, and this one's just straight ahead. Of course, you can always run back the way you came in if you want to. We have water over here in cups, in a filtered water here where you can, in a dispenser, feel free to get that. We also, in the cooler, have some bottled water. It's our alkalized, ionized water, and those are free with a donation to Real Bread Outreach. Real Bread Outreach is my nonprofit, the nonprofit ministry that the Lord put on my heart to start in 2007 to feed the hungry, the poor, the down and out, healthy, real food. So that's our mission and our goal. And if you want to give to a nonprofit ministry, this is a great one. We are a 501c3 tax deductible donation. So you can pick up brochures there if you like, but just your donation for the water would be great. All right? I'm tired already. I've been at it. I've been working on this class I work on it kind of all year, but really intensely for about 2 months, prepping and testing recipes and coming up with new recipes. So some we're going to use from some cookbooks that we carry. The oatmeal that you enjoyed this morning is from one of our very, very, very favorite cookbooks, The Shamrock and Peach. And if you don't have this book, we have not found a recipe in here that we didn't care for. The fennel fig cornbread that we're going to be serving today is a little different, and you might just go, you leave out the fennels, it'll be fine. But it still goes very well with the soup. But we just love Judith, and Judith is actually just did a mother-daughter tea with my daughter Ashley. They did that together, and she is going to come back and do a Celtic Christmas. Judith is from Ireland, and she's just fabulous. And she loves the South, though, and she feels like the Southern kind of atmosphere and personality and traditions is more like what she grew up with in Ireland. And so she really loves the South. And so she likes to meld the Southern and Irish traditions. And they're going to do a Christmas tea on December 13th. That's a Thursday. And then our, of course, annual Christmas party is December 6th, that evening. The week before, December 6th in the evening. That's a Thursday evening. And then we're very happy to be having Lars Liebisch, the German chef, come back. Any of y'all know, have any of y'all seen Lars Liebisch? Fabulous cook and just great personality. You'll just love him. And he's going to be here on November 9th and 10th. Friday afternoon, he's going to do a dessert menu in the pressure cooker. And then he's going to start the day Saturday morning with juicing from the Huron juicer and talk about juicing. And then do some breakfast, some eggs and oatmeal in the pressure cooker. So I'm real excited about that. And then Saturday afternoon, midday, noon to 3, he will be doing a full Thanksgiving dinner. Thanksgiving. Did you hear that little terrible Southern thing we do there? Fixing and Thanksgiving and I'm going. So anyway, but in preparation for this class, I actually, several years ago, looked up the word comfort. And I thought, where did we even get that word? You know, what is that word and why do we use it for certain foods? And it was actually used the first time in 1977 to describe foods, comfort foods. That's how long that term has kind of been around. And now I think everybody knows it. Oh, this is comfort food we talk about. And the word comfort literally means with strength. Com means with, forte, you might have seen, is strong. And so in thinking about that to bring comfort to someone, we maybe don't usually think of it in that context. We think of it more in the line of pity and, oh, I'm sorry, and give them a hug. But when someone's going through something, a struggle, a trial, a tribulation, a hard time, that hug, that encouragement literally does bring strength to them. And that's why I think over and over in the scripture, God tells us to comfort one another, to encourage one another, you know, to share with one another. And the verse that the Lord laid on my heart this week when I was preparing was 2 Corinthians 1, 3 and 4. It says, "Blessed be God, even the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies, and the God of all comfort." So all comfort really comes from him, who comforts us all in our tribulation, that we may be able to comfort those that are in trouble, by the comfort that we ourselves are comforted by God. Man, that's a lot of comforts in there. Basically, what it's saying is all comfort comes from God. And when we go through trials and tribulations, and some of you may be going through a trial and tribulation, and sometimes I ask God, why? And I know there's many, many lessons to learn, but sometimes I think God's just revealing that he truly is the God of comfort, and it's to help us be able to know how to comfort someone else. So we're to share that comfort. And in the light of food, the heart of Real Bread Outreach is sharing my healthy food, our healthy food, with others that are more down and out and going through trials. And I think, you know, what God is showing me there is something comforting about food. And all of you probably have certain foods that bring back memories. Maybe your mom made that when you were young. You go, oh, I think of my grandma when I see a coconut cake or a sour cream pound cake or pecan pie or some of those things. And or Christmas, a certain Christmas that you had this. Sometimes it brings back not so great memories. You're like, oh, I remember that Christmas. It was a big fight, and we were eating, you know. So sometimes it's not great things, but most of us gravitate towards those traditional dishes, particularly at holiday times or in the fall, that bring pleasant memories to our mind. But another thing, in the cold weather, as we start getting cold, there is a tension that, you know, when you're a little bit chilly. And so some of these foods like soups and stews actually are very comforting in that they're very warming. In fact, a word in the food industry used for broth and those types of stews is called restoratives. And the reason they're called restoratives, and in fact, that's actually where the word restaurant, did you ever wonder where the word restaurant came from? It actually comes from that root word that's restorative, because in those days, inns or restaurants, what they really were is a place for weary travelers to stop, go in, have a bowl of soup, piece of bread, hunk of cheese, probably some ale in there somewhere, but you know, it was warming and it was restorative, and it restored your strength and enabled you to go on. So I want to encourage you today to share the comfort that God has shown you, not just with a hug or kind words, but maybe let's start thinking beyond that and take somebody a pot of chicken soup. Chicken soup is the #1 comfort food in all realms. It's the #1, both men and women. Interesting fact, just a little trivia. I read that women tend to eat, because of comfort foods, those indulgent kind of comfort foods. And I don't know that those are really comfort foods. You know, the bowls of ice cream and the chocolate and those kind of things. I don't know. But they said women tend to eat for negative emotions. Men tend to gravitate towards those comfort things, those, you know, when they're positive emotions. So I thought that was interesting. So we just want to move towards those things that are warm and relaxing and enjoy some rest. I'll have to get Maggie. Would you go to the desk up there and get the neck wraps? And some of these ladies might, and men might enjoy the neck wrap. I started the morning, woke up at 4 o'clock this morning and put my neck wrap in the microwave. Didn't do my cup of tea this morning because it wasn't that cold outside, but I just start just about every morning with a cup of hot water or hot tea and my comfort neck wrap around my shoulders, just get me all relaxed and warm. And I went to bed with it last night, so I use it several times a day, and you will enjoy that in these cold months. So without further ado, I want to get on with our class because we have lots of great things to cook for you. So let's just ask the Lord to bless our time. Lord, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for your many blessings. We thank you for your infinite and perfect wisdom that brings us food in its season to nourish our bodies and to bring us warmth and restoration and comfort. And God, we just, as we receive these blessings from you, we pray that you would lead and guide us, and that we might share what you have given us with others, so that we could let our light shine and glorify you that's in heaven. So we thank you for this time. I thank you for all the hands that have helped me prepare. I pray for clarity of mind and just a consistently great class today, that everyone here will be refreshed, restored, and comforted and warmed. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. All right. Is that going to bother you if I leave that laying there? Probably. Okay. Did you enjoy the oatmeal? Isn't that delicious? And the whiskey sauce. That's so delicious. What a way to start the morning. I told Ashley, I said I was trying to come up with a new hot drink, and so I got Sharon's book out, the Shamrock and Peach, and thought about doing the Irish coffee. I thought I could do that. Yeah, it was like a lot of whiskey in there. I'm like, no wonder they're happy and see leprechauns and think that, you know, there's a pot of gold somewhere at the end of the rainbow. They're just happy. Woohoo! But anyway, so I thought, no, we will not start the day that way. So anyway, but we've got lots of great warm foods to make for you. We're going to, before we do the roasted vegetables, we're going to be serving this roasted vegetable barley and beef soup. Let me get my recipe. We're going to be serving it with a floating sesame loaf. So intriguing. When I found this recipe, and I haven't had a great opportunity to demonstrate it before now, in Ancient Grains for Modern Meals. This is by Maria Speck. She came earlier this year, I think maybe January or February, to do a class for us. And I found this recipe for this floating sesame loaf. So we're going to make this loaf of bread, and what you do is you actually drop it into a pot of water, room temperature water, and let it rise in the pot of water. So easy, and it doesn't take a lot of kneading. So I'm just going to bring my pot of water over here, and we will mix up this batch of dough first. And because I was going to go ahead and mix the dough up ahead of time, but then it really needs to drop down into the water as soon as you make it. Very easy to mix up. Now I'm using spelt here, so I'm going to add a little more flour than it calls for. I'm going to start with 3 cups and we'll see how that works. I typically find spelt needs a little more flour. And then all you do is you go ahead and add your yeast, your salt, part of the sesame seeds, and that was actually the honey granules that I used instead of the sugar called for there. So I've got that, and then I've got some lukewarm water here. I actually heated it up in my water pot earlier and then just let it cool down. These are our new, we have a new line of spatulas and kitchen utensils. I really love this one for kneading and mixing up stiff doughs. It's really nice. Well, I love it for cooking and sauteing vegetables too, but it's really nice for this because it's a little heavier duty. So I'm just going to do 1.25 cups of my warm water. Like I said, I heated that up and let it cool so that it was just the right temperature, because I don't have hot water in my sink is why I do that. So now we're just make that well in the center. I'm going to stir this loaf up, and bringing in that flour as we go. And according to Maria, why you don't need to knead this so much is letting it rise in the water actually does something to the gluten. Okay, this is spelt, so I think it's going to need a little more flour here. Maybe about 1/2 cup. Okay. And spelt, you don't want to knead it too much, but this is supposed to be a fairly sticky dough, fairly loose dough. You don't want it too sticky because you are going to put it in the water, so you don't want it so loose that it's going to disintegrate when you drop it down in this pot of water. So we're just going to knead it around here, incorporating a little more flour in as we knead it. All right. And with spelt, you don't want to knead it too much anyway. Those of you that, if you ever substitute spelt flour for your whole wheat flour, your red wheat or white wheat, you're going to, in my basic recipe that calls for 4.5 cups of flour, you're going to need about 5.5 cups of flour. And if you make it in the bread machine and you have your settings on your bread machine to knead, with your wheat, your hard wheats, they need to knead about 20 minutes. On spelt, you don't want to knead it more than about 8 minutes, okay? Because it's so low in gluten, and the gluten actually develops fairly quickly, so you want to not over knead it, because you actually can. It'd be very, very difficult to over knead your wheats, your hard wheat, your red wheat, your white wheat. But spelt, you actually can over knead it. Okay, so I've got my ball of dough here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drop it down. And this is cold tap water. It's not warm. It's just cold tap water. And we're going to drop it down in here. I know, weird, huh? And it sinks to the bottom, but in about 15 minutes to 30 minutes, it's going to float to the top. And when it floats to the top, it's risen, and then we'll take it out and shape it a little bit, let it rest, and then we'll bake it. So we're just going to put that there to rise, and we'll come back to it in just a little bit. All right. So let me get the dough off my hands, and we'll just set that aside for right now because we'll come back to it in just a minute. But I think when Maria came and did her class, I found that recipe like the day before she came. I mean, the night before, when I was already home and had already prepped for the class. And I was like, man, I would have loved to have tried that. And so when I was getting, then I forgot about it. And then when I was getting ready for the fall class and came up with the roasted vegetable soup, I thought, well, that would be nice to serve the the floating loaf with the roasted vegetable soup. So now we are going to roast some vegetables. I really never understood what all the hype was about roasted vegetables. I just really, really never did. And I was like, okay, what's the big deal? Well, once I started trying it, I was like, okay, this is first of all very, very cool. And not cool, actually, it's very warm. And so I think what makes roasting vegetables so nice is, again, it's kind of those fall produce, those squashes, the sweet potatoes, the potatoes. Bell peppers are great. Apples, you can even throw that in. Butternut squash, throw that in. Those are just perfect for roasting. But you really can roast any vegetable. You can do green beans or broccoli and things like that. But I think most of us think of roasting vegetables with the carrots, sweet potatoes, butternut squash, those types of things. But I encourage you to try some other vegetables that maybe you don't think of as readily. Beets, I've heard since I started that beets are amazing. Tomatoes, of course, are amazing. Just so many things, and the sky's the limit. And here's the deal. It is so easy to do. So easy to do, because basically, I should be cutting while I'm talking. Basically, you really can just do it with some olive oil and salt and pepper. There's no recipe. You're just gonna kind of look at the way the vegetables look and determine. All you want to do is just have enough oil on there to make a nice shine on all the vegetables. And all you got to do there with the salt and pepper is I try to have some type of vegetable that's tasty raw, like peppers or something like that. And then I just will taste a piece of the vegetable and just see if you get that little bit of bite on the salt. It needs to be that salty. Now, there's lots of herbs and spices that you can add if you want to, but honestly, the flavor of the vegetables is so nice with roasting that it really, you don't need a lot. And so don't get heavy-handed with those herbs and spices. Now, what's the big deal about roasting? What happens when you roast vegetables? Two things you must remember. There's two important points: surface area and what's the other one? Heat. There we go. I'm gonna slice some like that and then quarter that, or half it. Surface area and heat. And when you put vegetables in a hot oven, say 400 to 500, anywhere in there. I kind of found this morning 450 on my oven worked just about right for the vegetables that I was doing. When you do that high temperature with them coated in a little bit of oil and spread out so you don't steam them. That's the thing. You don't want them touching and you don't want them piled up. At the high temperatures, your sugars, your natural sugars that are in the vegetables caramelize and give you a very, very sweet flavor. And then the proteins actually brown. They might look burned, but they really aren't. They give it a really, really nice blackened, I don't know, it's just a very different flavor, very unique. And so that's what you're doing. You're caramelizing those sugars and blackening those proteins. And that's what gives you the delicious flavor of roasted vegetables. And like I said, so easy. The sky's the limit. Size does matter, so you want to think about what size. Go ahead and we'll cut those. I don't peel my sweet potatoes. You certainly can if you want to. Some of them I noticed that yesterday when I did it that the skin was a little tough, so it just determined that as your same, about the same. We'll just do them all the same. Also, when you're cutting your vegetables for roasting, again, surface area. Not just surface area on the pan is important, but the actual surface area of the vegetable itself. So there's going to be more surface area if you cut on a diagonal and have more outside exposed. So you want to think about those types of things when you're cutting your vegetables. And like I said, you want to make sure that your vegetables are about the same size or in thickness, and so they'll get done at the same time. All right, so let's start putting our vegetables in a bowl. I don't think that one's big enough. Well, it will do. Okay, let's add some carrots to this. Hey Maggie, can you get this red bowl and bring it back to me? Wash it. Okay, and then I'll do I love roasted onions. Sorry, Ashley. Butternut squash it is excellent, and don't be afraid to throw some fruit in there. Butternut squash with roasted apples, even though you're going to coat it with olive oil and some salt and pepper, it really makes a nice, wonderful sweetness to the butternut squash. Zucchini is excellent roasted. Lemon works very well with zucchini. Thyme and carrots work very well. But like I said, again, don't worry too much about seasoning and putting a lot of herbs and spices. You're going to be surprised. The vegetables, I'm going to make these vegetables just for you to eat today. You're going to be surprised at just how tasty it is with just salt and pepper because of the natural sweetness that comes out from the heating it and cooking it at high temperature. So we're just going to add these onions and peppers. I really like the peppers. Let's add some more pepper. That one. And then this is turnip. I've never been a big turnip fan, but it is very delicious roasted. And then parsnips. These are parsnips. They look like white carrots. They're very delicious roasted. I don't know if you're... Hey Sharon, are you supposed to peel a turnip? I don't think you have to, do you? Huh? You do? See, I don't peel anything, so... Most vegetables, I think of leaving that peel on because that's where so many of the nutrients are, is in that peel. All right. So we're just going to cut the turnip in slices here. And then basically what we're going to do is stick it in the hot oven once we get it tossed with some olive oil. We're going to stick it in the hot oven and just let it roast. First couple of times you do it, or if you're doing some new vegetables, you might want to try it. Check it in about 10 minutes. What you're listening for is for the sizzling of the oil in the pan. And listen for that sound if you're nearby. There we go. See how pretty that is? That would look really great. Butternut squash is excellent, but I have some in the vegetables here, so we'll just go with the sweet potatoes today. And now it's about a tablespoon or so per oil per pound, but honestly, just don't even worry about it. Just sprinkle it over. I've seen a lot of, even on cooking shows and a lot of magazines, they'll have you, particularly with tomatoes, they'll tell you to drizzle your oil over the vegetables already on the pan. That's okay and it will work, but you waste a lot of oil that way, and you spill a lot on the pan that you don't need. It's not touching the vegetables. And then a lot of times that oil, because of the high temperature, the oil will actually burn and then give the vegetables a bitter taste. So you're actually better to toss the vegetables with the olive oil in the bowl, and that way you can kind of determine when you have enough. If you want to actually Maggie, bring that glass bowl back to me. We'll dump these into this glass bowl. And because what I did here was I roasted the vegetables that go in the soup, and then these I'm going to just let y'all eat. So little pepper. Ashley, can you do the pepper now that I got my hand all oily? Go ahead and put the pepper on before you get your hand off. You can use a spatula here to stir it, but hey, your hand works really, really well. I think it needs just a little more oil. The parsnips to me look a little dry. That looks good. Like I said, you just are looking for a nice shine on those vegetables. And then once again, secret, heat. So I found 400 to 450, 500 seemed a little hot, but you just gonna have to play with your oven a little bit. And there's some tips in your handout there, you know, if it gets too brown, blackened without being done inside, you know, to lower that oven temperature a little bit or vice versa. So there's some troubleshooting ideas there. Yes, ma'am. The dipping oil would work just fine with this. She's talking about the olive, we call it the olive oil dipping sauce, or the olive oil dip, where we put the garlic. It's in my red cookbook. We put lots of cloves of garlic and some Italian seasoning and salt. It would work just fine, because that's your basic seasonings that you want to use. Okay, I think this is good. Now I'm going to just taste. I think it could use just a little more salt. Like I said, you want that salt to just, you want to taste it. You want to be able to taste just a little, and you'll know what I'm talking about when at the bite of it. You want that salt to bite you just a little bit. And certainly fresh herbs would go, you know, work well here. I love using rosemary on my potatoes. And now we're just going to spread them out. And it's not soaking. You just want a nice, see how there's nice shine. Like, yeah, yesterday when I roasted them, I think I got a little too much oil because there was a lot of oil left in the bowl. You really just want a nice shine on the vegetables, and all of these are nice and shiny. And you don't want them stacked up, because if you don't keep them in a single layer and give them some space, they're going to steam instead of roast. All right, so the surface area and heat. That's the two big things of roasting vegetables. Okay? There's that one. And there's this one. How's our sesame loaf down there? Is it rising yet? Oh, alrighty. This one might be, hand me that pan back if you can get it before it gets too cool. I mean, too hot. This pan looks just a little crowded, so I'm gonna. All right. Okay. You just really want them touching the metal pan. And I read, you know, you can do it in glass, but it really is a little more preferable with the metal. It's a little better conductor of the heat there. Okay? All right, there's our vegetables. Go ahead and set it for about 30 minutes, because I did a kind of a trial run yesterday to see about how long it was going to take, and about 30. We'll check it in 30. If your oven's really hot and you're doing a little bit more delicate vegetables, or, well, no matter what, you might want to, when you hear that sizzling in your oven, you might want to check it. If it's getting really brown on the bottom or blackened, then flip them over. If it's not really getting blackened on the bottom side that's touching the pan, then you can just leave them. And I found that my USA pans didn't seem to really char them that much on the bottom, so I pretty much could just leave them in there. But that's going to be determined more by your pan. All right, look at our loaf. Can you see it? How it's risen up, is floating. See? All right, so we're going to lift it out. And it's just this drippy, gooey, globby mess, and you're going to go, what have I created? And you're just going to plop it down there. Yep, and that can be dumped and brought back. And then we want to wash your hands or dry them. And all these directions, they're all, she goes into a lot of detail how to actually do this. Okay, and then all you're really going to do is we're just going to kind of pull this from top to bottom a little bit. You don't want to incorporate a lot of flour in. And just shape it in that round loaf. Okay. And then we're going to sprinkle the rest of the sesame seeds which I used the wrong sesame seeds, so there's not very many in the loaf. And then we're going to let this rest again, and then we'll bake it. Okay? So she suggests letting it rest on a piece of parchment paper, sprinkled with a little cornmeal. Okay, I think I was actually supposed to brush this with water, but it was pretty wet, so I'm just going to. You really can't mess this loaf up. All right? So we're just going to slide it aside and let it rest, and then we'll bake it. Yep. All right. So that's our floating sesame loaf. And I find that it just kind of changes the texture of the bread. It's almost that chewy bagel kind of texture a little bit, slightly. Not completely of boiling those bagels, but it's a really nice texture. How long do I let that rest, did it say? See, they can't help me because we didn't, the recipe is in the cookbook, so we didn't type it up. Cover with a towel for 15 to 20 minutes. Oh, phooey, I'm getting ready for Christmas, so just use my Christmas towels. There we go. All right, we'll let it rest. Okay. All right, now let's get on with our roasted vegetable beef and barley soup. To me, when the weather starts getting cool, there's nothing like warm soup. And I love soup weather. I think Brad particularly could live off of soup. Okay, so, all right. Okay, first thing we want to do is saute our onions. And whenever I'm going to work with meat or things like that, I like using either the Fissler Comfort Turner. This is really handy, or this new one that gives you a little more stiffness here. So that either one of those are nice. Yes, so we want to heat the oil and the onion. Add the onion, the mushroom, and the fennel. Oh, that was the fennel. Did I not have onion? Oh, well, I have some onion in here. Excuse me. Hey, Sharon, did you end up using all the fennel? Where's the rest of it? Oh, it's wrapped up. I didn't see it. Okay. So that's just our chopped onion. Now, with a pressure cooker, you want to I would do your vegetables first. Traditional cooking, this would take about an hour to cook if you didn't cook it in the pressure cooker. You can do this recipe without a pressure cooker. But if you're going to use the pressure cooker, you definitely want to get your vegetables roasting first, because they're going to take more time than the soup. You're going to add those roasted vegetables at the end, but if you're going to traditionally cook it, then you can certainly get your soup started and then meanwhile roast your vegetables while it's cooking. But in a pressure cooker, we can actually have this ready in about 20 minutes, 18 to 20 minutes. The first time that I made this recipe, I cooked the barley separate because I don't have the recipe that I was kind of adapting this recipe from called for quick cooking barley, and we don't have those. We just use the hulled barley. And so it takes about 20 minutes in a pressure cooker, about an hour conventionally. So I knew that I needed to either cook it on the side or come up with another plan. So the first time I made it, I actually cooked the barley on the side, and if you want to do that, it's the 2/3 cup of hulled barley, and I used 2 cups of water, and just put it in a pressure cooker, locked the lid, and I pressured it for about 18 to 20 minutes, and just let it then quick release while the rest of my soup was cooking, and then I dumped it in. I actually have never done it the way I'm going to do it today, but when I got to reading the recipe, I went, why can I not just dump the barley in there and let it all cook? I think it'll be more flavorful, cooked in the broth and the water and with the meat and everything. So that's what we're going to do now. We were actually supposed to brown the meat first and set it aside. Fancy that. Yes, thank you. I just kind of skipped down. I saw the roasting the vegetables, and yeah, we'll just wing it here. So,
well, do you want to go ahead and dump it in then?
Yeah, you know what? I don't see why we can't dump it in. Let me coat it with a little flour like it's supposed to be. And when you're doing like stews and things like that, you can coat it with a little flour here and a little salt, and that way as it cooks it will actually thicken the broth. So we're just going to brown our meat. I don't see any reason why we can't brown it all at the same time. Okay. And I just went ahead and used barley flour here. Since I was using barley in the recipe, I thought that way, if there's anybody with wheat sensitivities, I don't have the wheat in there. So since I thought, why not? If I'm going to use barley as the grain, the whole grain, why not use barley in flour as the coating flour and the thickening flour? So we're just going to let that brown here, just slightly. Oh. Here, I'll wash it.
Escape me.
Oh, there's more. And then these are the vegetables that it calls for in the recipe. This is the potato, 2 or 3 carrots, and a butternut squash that I roasted before the class so that they would be ready, because the soup's only going to take about 20 minutes to make, and the vegetables would probably take longer than that. All right? So what's nice about these turners that are a little stiffer, like Ashley's using, the Comfort Turner from Fissler, is they can really scrape those brown pieces off of the bottom of the pan. And that's what we should have done. We should have browned the meat, just braised it and browned it first, taken it out, and then browned our onions and everything, scraping up those bits. But it'll work. We're just okay there. All right. So now we're going to add our water. Did you put the garlic in already? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to add our broth. We want to scrape up the bits of meat that are stuck on the bottom of the pan, so we get every bit of that and it doesn't burn on the bottom. Scrape it up so it goes into the broth. I love the Imagine broth. I think when you're making soups that are broth-based, start with a good broth. It makes all the difference in the world. And I love the Imagine brand. And you'll see the difference when particularly in the chicken one. Okay. How many of y'all know what fennel is? Oh, golly. I had to look for it. I was like, I know what the seeds are, and that's that. They kind of have a licorice flavor, and I'm not a big fan of licorice, but it's that distinct, not a fan of licorice at all. In fact, they were just laughing about me and my licorice story. But anyway, it's that distinctive flavor in Italian sausage. And I do love Italian sausage, and I found out that that's that fennel that tastes on pizza a lot of times if you get one with Italian sausage. So I do love the flavor sometimes of the fennel seeds, but I never knew what a fennel bulb looked like. And this is the way it comes. Now this was actually a full ball here, almost looked like an onion, big white root or bulb here. And that's what we chopped up when we were browning with the onions. We browned the fennel. So you just want to use that part, maybe even some of the stem going on up. So anyway, and then you can even use the little green part here as a garnish if you want. But roasted fennel is actually very, very tasty. Like I said, not a fan of licorice, but roasted, it really, really had a nice sweet flavor to it. All right, so now we want to add, we're just going to add our barley right in here with the meat. And we're going to add a couple of cups of water. What's this? That gets added at the end. Okay. All right, we'll see if it works. Don't know why it wouldn't. So now we're going to lock our lid into place. How many of you have seen the new Vitaquick, Fissler Vitaquick pressure cookers? They redesigned the pressure cookers this year to have a automatic locking handle. How many of y'all have the Fissler pressure cookers already? Remember the little lever that you had to push back? They redesigned the handle so it automatically locks. Also, the biggest other feature difference in the Vitaquicks as opposed to the Blue Point is the conical shape of the pot, so that you can stack them inside of each other without scratching the edges. So that's a really nice feature. Love, same great Fissler design and strength and durability as the Blue Point, but I really do love the handle. Very, very nice there. Same pressure valve that's going to come up. I really, really love pressure cookers in the fall and for doing soup. And I kind of say this all the time whenever I do a pressure cooking class. Georgia falls. Uh-oh, hang on. Fall and spring are two of my favorite times of the year, except that a lot of times the weather will be cool one day and hot the next day. And we'll go into a cool snap and you think, great, I'm going to have all these wonderful soups. Or even you get up in the morning, like day before yesterday, got up nice and chilly in the morning, but by afternoon, it was like, oh my gosh, I was turning the air conditioning on. You know, it's like, this is not, I don't want soup tonight. So what I love about a pressure cooker is there's most soups. I mean, there's a few that'll take 45 minutes to an hour, but most soups I can have ready in 30 minutes or less. And it's just so nice because then I can plan my soup menu in the fall. And now once it gets winter, soup's pretty good all the time. But fall, when those crisp nights and cool mornings and then the hot days, it's still hot by the time dinner time, so you may not want soup. But you can plan your soup menus when it did stay cool and still get it done and on the table. And the thing that's so nice about pressure cooking is cooking under pressure infuses those flavors. It really intensifies the flavors. You're going to find that soup cooked in the pressure cooker, no matter what it is, just has more flavor than cooked conventionally. It's a closed system. As you can see, there's no steam coming out. There's no water boiling off. It's locked down tight. You'll see a little bit in just a minute. It will release some of the steam in there as it's letting out the oxygen, and then it'll close, and then the pressure will start building. So that's what I just never tasted any better chicken soup than when I started cooking it in the pressure cooker. How many of y'all were in the pressure cooking class on Saturday? I mean, is it not amazing? And I used to, when I cooked it conventionally, I used to have to then, once I got the broth all cooked, I'd add all this bouillon or soup base, you know, or broth or something. But in the pressure cooker, I find I can just use my seasonings and salt and pepper, really keep it very simple, and it's just this wonderful, wonderful flavored broth. So that's our beef barley soup and we're going to add the roasted vegetables at the end and some seasonings at the end. All right, so now we're going to get our floating sesame loaf. Has been resting now. So I'm going to let it go in the oven, and I'm actually going to bake it on one of my stones. Yep. And I'm going to just slide it off the parchment paper onto my stone. That didn't work very well, did it? There we go. Okay. The what? I don't think so. I don't think so. It was, let's look. No, I think it would go in the 6 quart. It's not, it's just about half full here in the 8. So I think it would go. In fact, I originally had it planned to go in the 6 quart, but then thought might be a little much, but it looks just fine. It looks just fine. So, all right. Now, what I want to do next for you is what we're going to serve with we're going to serve the roasted vegetable soup with the sesame loaf. And I thought that I would make for you today the cultured butter. I don't know if any of you have seen the fermentation class or came to the fermentation class, but my son Caleb made cultured butter for us that day, and it is amazing, amazing. And this is a great way. It's got a little tartness to it, but I think even your children will love it. It's an amazing way to get those good probiotic organisms in your body without the typical sauerkraut or yogurt or kefir. And I got to where when I had the butter in the house that I would just, some days my breakfast would just be a piece of bread slathered with this cultured butter. So all you're going to do to start the butter is you're going to take a pint of heavy cream. And I like to use a quart jar. That works very, very well. I don't know that these directions, are they in there? If not, they're, what you're using to start it is the vegetable culture, and the complete directions are in the package, okay, with the vegetable culture. So this is what you're using, the vegetable culture. This is just like a yogurt culture or a kefir culture. It's got your good organisms that are dehydrated and in a dormant stage here. And you just sprinkle it in. And then you're going to stir it or shake it, either one. And I just take a wire whisk and I just stir it in. And the cream can be right from the refrigerator, cold. And just stir it in. You can even shake it just to make sure it all gets really good and incorporated. And then you're going to just leave it on your counter. Just leave it overnight, or about 24 hours, to ferment. The organisms will grow. And then this I actually did in a bowl, but you're going to see how stiff this is. Now, guess what this is? Guess what this is? Sour cream. So you could use this like sour cream. Look how beautiful that is. Okay? But we're going to take this sour cream and go ahead and whip it into butter. This is truly cultured sour cream. And look how easy. That's all I did, was just stir in the culture, let it sit 24 hours, and then I chilled it. You could, in 24 hours, you could just go right ahead and whip this into butter, but it really will whip faster if you'll go ahead and refrigerate it and let it get nice and cold. So we're just going to put it in our whipping bowl. Would you get me a lid to the mixing bowl? And you're going to see this go through several stages. I don't know if you can see it so much here. You can start out on the high speed, but when the butter starts forming, the milk will start separating out as the butter solidifies, and then it'll start splashing. So you want to just watch it and watch for that butter to form. Can take as much as 30 minutes, but typically it whips up in about 5 to 10, maybe not even that much. In fact, the double whisk bowl is very effective at whipping. It's already getting there. So usually, if it's good and cold, now if it's room temperature, it could easily take 20 minutes to whip. But It's definitely turning into the whipped cream kind of stage now. You just want to keep watching it. Watch for that butter to form. It's getting there, almost there. Come on. Well, I'm not going to stand here for 10 minutes.
Could y'all see how all the steam was coming out a second ago and then it just stopped? That means it has sealed completely now, and then the pressure valve is going to start coming up. So that's very normal for steam to be coming out here, and then all of a sudden it builds enough pressure that that gasket completely locks inside the lid.
There we go. You see? And it even magically turns yellow. I'm going to turn it off and scrape down my edges here just a little bit until we get all of that. Yep, and then we'll turn it on. Whoops. There we go. So you don't get a butter bath here. Yep. Now look, it actually has turned what looks like liquid again. And then in just a minute, it will. One thing I love about this spatula and the design of it is see how it never touches the counter. All of their utensils are like that. A little bit more. We're almost there. Okay, look. Now, see what, can you see it? There's the butter. And then there's the, what's that called? The liquid? Buttermilk. That's really buttermilk. So now all we're going to do is we're going to get this and we'll take it off. Yeah. And kind of squeeze that milk out of it. Now some recipes tell you tell you what, let's go ahead and move that. To wash the butter, and you can. But I find that you can just work it with a little flat spatula and get the rest of that milk out of there. So either way, I think the directions in the packet of Veggie Culture tell you to wash it. Did y'all know that's how butter was made? And you can do it with the sweet cream. You can make your own butter like that. But your cultured butter is just that. It's so much better for you because you're getting that live active bacteria. Oh yeah, there's a little tartness. You'll see. We're going to eat it on, I'm going to serve it to you on the bread. No, I would use it for eating. I wouldn't go to this much, not that it was trouble. It wasn't that much trouble. You can see how easy it is. You can actually do it in a blender. The little Tri-Best will do it as well. Maybe not the full 2 cups.
Go 20 minutes.
Yes. So now we're going to, actually 18 will be fine, but.
Can y'all see the pressure is up? A recipe will tell you take it to the second or the first ring, And I don't know if y'all could tell from back there, but there's 2 white rings on this pressure valve. And, sorry, I'm trying to set a timer at the same time. And so that's the second white ring right there, and that's what we're gonna, now that it's up to that, now you start your timer for cooking. And now we're gonna reduce the heat enough just to maintain that pressure.
Okay, now look what I've done. As I've just worked it and pressed it, it's gotten some more of the milk out. And you can just continue to do that until you get a nice, firm butter. And like I said, that's your cultured butter, and then this is your buttermilk. Okay? And it, I found...
Yes, you can use that for cooking.
Absolutely use the buttermilk for cooking, yes. Or drink it. I find that the cultured butter will last a couple of weeks in the refrigerator. It did not do well just leaving it sitting on the counter. I mean, it stayed, but it molded or it spoiled, you know, so you really want to, if you're going to leave it on your counter, you want to either use a butter bell or use it quickly. But if you're not going to eat it right away, then just go ahead and...
You could certainly set it out that morning
Yeah,
if you're planning on having company over for dinner and you know you want the butter for dinner that night. You know, go ahead and you could take it out around lunchtime, something like that, and let it soften so that it's workable.
Okay.
But you wouldn't want to bake with this because of those live cultures. You'd kill them in the heat.
Yeah. I mean, you certainly could. This is the way they made butter for lots of years. So. But this is the difference in butter and why they label now sweet cream butter, is they didn't let it go through the culturing process. And unfortunately in America, that's what's happened to most of our food, is even food that you think is fermented foods, even a lot of the yogurts and things in the grocery store, most of them have to be pasteurized after they've been cultured. So your sour cream, your buttermilk, those that all used to give us good active live bacteria, now they don't. And so we think we're eating this healthy food and it's not really doing what we thought it was going to do. So that's just an easy way. I mean, you saw how beautiful that sour cream was. It's going to be, just so wonderful. It's so easy, so very easy to do.
That's your timer for the roasted vegetables.
Okay,
do you want to check them?
Let's check them. What? You know, I don't know. I'd have to read that again on the directions. I can't remember. You mean if I use some of this to culture the next one? I don't see why you couldn't, but I'll have to look, and I'll try to look at that in just a few minutes and answer that question. That's a good question. Okay. The question is, can you use some of the cultured cream to culture the next batch of cream, or do you have to have a starter every time? So I don't know. I'll just have to see.
Could you use some of the buttermilk after you make the butter?
We'll just, yeah, let's look that up. I'll try to look that up while Ashley's doing her soup here in just a minute. Okay, you'll see that some of the peppers are starting to get a little browned on the bottom, but I don't think that any of them are blackened that much or roasted that much. So let's just go ahead and stick these back in. How long did they go?
This was 30, right?
That was
did I
30?
set it for 30 minutes? Is that what she said?
Okay. All right. Well,
yes. I'm seeing some puzzled looks and some yeses. So
I don't
we'll go
remember.
with yes. It
I
was
thought
30
it was 20.
minutes.
Was it 20? 30 is what I told her? Okay. All right.
So we're going to do 10 more minutes?
Sure. All right. So now we've got our beef and barley soup.
You're doing your
It's
pumpkin
cooking.
next. Is what you have. Pumpkin is next. Is what you have on your handout.
Oh, I thought it was the, oh yeah, to cook the whole pumpkin. Yes, let's do that.
Yes, let's do.
Can you get me, where's my little one?
Your little pumpkin?
Yeah.
Oh, Sharon knows.
My little pumpkin. All right. Okay. Let me just tell you, don't buy any pumpkins before Halloween. all those church parking lots that have all those pumpkins out there, the day after Halloween, they will hug your neck if you will come haul them off for them. So just go get some pumpkins. I mean, if you want one for that dreaded holiday. But anyway, just go get it. But wait till the day after and go get all the pumpkins you want. Big pumpkin, little pumpkin, it really doesn't matter. Sometimes the smaller pumpkins, the darker the meat, the sweeter they are. This is actually sold as a pie pumpkin, just because you'll see the flesh is a lot darker. But the big pumpkins work just as well. They're just a little harder to manipulate. There's several ways you can cook pumpkin. You want to get me the 6 liter? Several ways you can cook pumpkin. You can either cut it open, and it's a little hard to cut when it's raw, you know, like that. So you need a nice steady knife, sturdy knife. And you want to get me the trivet and about 2 cups of water. But there's so then you can cut it, and I tell you what is great for getting those seeds out. If you've never had or used a grapefruit spoon, they're wonderful for more than just grapefruit. We sell them out there as a grapefruit spoon, but I'm going to tell you, they're wonderful for getting those seeds out of your butternut squash and your pumpkins and your acorn squash, those things, for scraping those seeds out and getting down to the good pulp. So what you want to do, if you've got big pumpkins like this, cut them open and then scrape the seeds out and then just cut them in big chunks. In the pressure cooker, it's so easy. You want to put your trivet in, put about 2 cups of water in, and then just pile in your pieces of pumpkin. I don't take the skin off. It's a lot easier to just, once the pumpkin's cooked, than just to scrape the cooked pulp out of the skin. So I leave my pieces pretty big as my pressure cooker. And this one, you could certainly leave them pretty big and just pile them in there. You can actually go all the way up to the top with them because you're only got just your couple of cups of liquid in the bottom. And all you're doing is pretty much steaming it.
But yeah, let me explain that really quick. On all of the pressure cookers, there is a third line, a half fill line, and a max line. It's when you're doing liquids, like a whole pot of soup or stew, you don't want the liquids to come over that max line. If you're doing something like a whole pot of apples for applesauce or a whole pot of pumpkins, you can bring them right to the top. It's that max line is for liquids. That's a liquid max line, not food. Does that make sense?
Does that make sense to you? So like if you're stacking up corn on the cob or potatoes or pumpkin or whatever, it can come on up. It's when you're steaming something, it doesn't matter. As long as you're not in the way of the pressure valves. So you just want to make sure, as long as you can easily get that lid on and off. You don't want to go, oh, it's sticking, and shove it, because then it might be in the way of engaging these valves. Okay, so that's the only thing you want to watch out for. So you can, like in the pumpkin lentil soup that we're going to make in just a few minutes, we did go ahead and peel that because I wanted to cook it in the broth with the lentils so that the flavor of the pumpkin would already be in there. But you can certainly, if you have mashed pumpkin, you can use the mashed pumpkin in that lentil pumpkin soup recipe. And that is from the Shamrock and Peach cookbook. But this is a way to cook pumpkin that I learned from my sister. And she lives in South Georgia, and they actually grew pumpkins. And she told me about pressure cooking the pumpkin whole. You don't have to pierce it, anything. And so this works very nice for these small pie pumpkins. And the 6-liter pressure cooker works very well for that. And so we'll just lock the lid into place. Got my 2 cups of water in the bottom. It doesn't really matter, but the question is that the maximum amount of water that you want to put in there? Let's say that's probably the minimum amount of water you want to put in there, because you want a nice level of water all the way across your pressure cooker. So you want about a 1/2 inch, of water at least. So in a bigger pressure cooker, it might need a little bit more, but 2 cups, when you're steaming something like this, that you're not going to throw the water, I mean, you're not using the water anyway. Like steaming corn on the cob or things like that. Potatoes, when I do potatoes for mashed potatoes, I don't typically use quite that much because I want to just incorporate the water into the potatoes, so I don't want to have to drain some water off. But when you're steaming something like this, it doesn't matter that much. You just want enough water in there to cover the bottom, about a ½ inch, and enough that won't boil away while the pressure's coming up, okay? If you don't put enough, sometimes you might lose a little bit of that liquid. Not usually, but you might. So anyway, so we're gonna bring the pressure up always on high heat. When the pressure comes up, then we're gonna lower it. Like my burner here, these are in Fissler's induction burners. They go from 0 to 9. And mine, to maintain my pressure, is on level 2. So that's about where we are with that. So with the levels to maintain the pressure. But you'll have to determine that in your stovetop. And gas and electric are going to vary. It's going to vary from stovetop to stovetop. The lever? Yes, there's still going to be the second ring, whether you have the old Blue Point, the Fissler Blue Points, or the Kuhn Rikans that we sell. It's still going to be the second ring. The Kuhn Rikan, it's a red ring. These, it's a white ring. So it's still going to take it up to the second ring. Once the pressure comes up, we'll turn it down to maintain the pressure, and I will pressure this for 10 minutes. Okay? Maintaining the pressure at the second ring. Yeah, so you want to bring it up like we did here. You want it to come up to that second ring. Once it gets up there, you've done this on high heat. Once it gets to that second ring, you're going to have to turn that heat down to maintain that level. It's kind of like turning it down to simmer, okay? You just want to keep it right there. If you didn't turn the heat down, the pressure would keep building, and you're not going to explode the pressure cooker, but you're going to start seeing it shooting out steam everywhere as a safety measure so that you won't build up too much pressure on the inside of the pot and blow up the pot. You're not going to do that.
Sorry, I turned myself off. The problem with leaving it on high, though, is that it's going to burn on the bottom if you left it on high. It's not, like she said, it's not going to explode, but you're probably going to burn your food if you left it on high.
Because you're letting that steam and that liquid out, okay?
Did you show them how to release it in case it does go over pressure, though?
Nope, go ahead.
The same way you're going to unlock it. You're going to just push this button. You're going to release some of that steam until you bring that valve back down.
If it really goes way over and it's really steaming
and it's
loudly,
hissing and it's letting out steam as a safety measure, then you're going to turn it down some more, release some of that steam. And this is actually called the, this is one of the ways that you release the pressure to then open the lid when you're done cooking. And this is called the quick release method, and that's just pushing this button and letting all the steam come out. There's a natural release. You talked about that a little bit ago. A natural release would just be to set it off the heat and let it come down all by itself. Certain foods take a little longer or a little shorter amount of time, you know, depending on what's in there and how full it is. And then the cold water release would be to take the whole pot over to the sink, let cold water run just over the edge. Don't let water get anywhere near these, but just over the edge, and that's their cold water release, and it'll bring it down really fast. And you would use that if you wanted to stop the cooking process immediately, because as long as this is up at any point, at one ring, halfway between, it's cooking it in there. It's under pressure and it's cooking it. So something like green beans that you're wanting, it only takes like 2 minutes to cook 2 pounds of green beans in a pressure cooker, but you don't want it to overcook and then get too mushy, and you want to stop that cooking immediately, so you would take this over to the sink and use the cold water release. So natural release is just setting it off, quick release is pushing the button, and cold water release is just running cold water over the edge.
all righty.
And the pumpkin is actually already starting to come up.
Okay, which on the induction burners, even though they're electric, they respond very, very quickly. So I'm going to let this come on up to the second ring before I start adjusting my heat. Gas, if you have a gas burner, gas, you know, responds immediately. So you turn that gas flame down and it's down. On an electric burner, you've got a couple of options that you can do, because you know it's going to stay hot for a little while. So if you wait for it to come up to the second ring before you turn your heat down on that burner on an electric stove, it's going to probably go over pressure and start releasing pressure for a little bit before it drops down and maintains. So what Lars and Fissler taught me to do on an electric stove, when it comes up to that first ring, you've got it on high heat and the pressure comes up to that first ring, go ahead and turn your heat down then, because the electric burner will stay hot enough to bring that pressure on up to the second ring, but by the time it gets to the second ring, the burner has cooled down enough to be maintaining. Does that make sense? So that was a little trick I thought, oh, why didn't I think of that? Because what I used to do is just set it off and wait for my burner to cool down, or turn that burner off and have another burner next to it, you know, on medium to low. But that kind of defeats the purpose of cooking with a pressure cooker to save energy when I've got two burners going. So when I learned that, I was like, well, that makes sense. So now it's up to my second ring, so I'm just going to turn it down to low to medium, and we're going to cook the pumpkin for 6 minutes. I'm sorry, 10 minutes. It's about 6 minutes if you have the pumpkin peeled and in chunks, okay? So that seems to be plenty there.
Peeled and in chunks, or just in chunks?
I'm sorry, not peeled, just in chunks is what I meant. Or, well, either one, because the lentil soup we're going to cook for 6 minutes, and that was plenty. Okay. You want to turn that burner on? Oh, well, you can't until I take the pot over there. One of the safety features of the Fissler induction burner is when if you lift a pot off, it turns off. So I don't know if you're familiar with induction heating, but it's magnetism, and so it has to have something there for it to operate. So a safety feature is it will turn itself off when you take it off the burner. So I'm going to take the pumpkin on over here. And just put it on 3 for 10 minutes.
Which is why you can do this and not start a fire. Isn't that weird? Lars put a $100 bill under there. I'll do a paper towel.
Okay. Now we're going to make for you, how many of y'all love pot pie? Pot pie is like another one of those comfort foods, and you usually think of chicken pot pie. That's one of my favorites. Well, I kind of got this inspiration one afternoon. I'm a sucker for cooking magazines, so I had gotten this thing, and there was these pot pie recipes, and there was some kind of Mexican dish in there, and I was like, what if I did like that recipe, but then put pot pie on top? So Brad calls this Mountains of Mexico, but Ashley calls it Mexican pot pie, which sounds a little better. So we're just going to brown our ground beef. Oh, that's the olive oil dipping sauce. It's olive oil with lots of garlic and lots of Italian seasoning and a little bit of salt. And Brad will make this up all the time, and we keep it in a quart jar by our stove, and we use this in place of regular oil for most everything we cook. He also uses it to fry eggs, grilled cheese instead of butter. We just love it. Ashley's little girl, Catherine, is allergic to butter, and she loves for Papa to make her a fried egg because she said he makes the best, and it's because they're coated with garlic and Italian seasoning, and they're just very delicious. So here's our ground beef.
This is done.
Okay.
How do you take it? How do you need to take this one down?
I say with soups, I just let them naturally come down. I think we've got a few more minutes on the bread. Let's see where we are on the bread.
Actually, the timer just went off
on
the bread.
All right, let's see. I don't think it's quite.
This is a nonstick pan. This is one of Fissler's frying pans. What is the Dad?
I forget what the material is completely. It is titanium.
The non-stick coating on the Fissler fry pan?
Yes, Fissler was one of the first companies to come out with a PFOA-free non-stick coating. And it's PFOA-free even in the manufacturing process. By 2000, was it 10? They were supposed to have eliminated this in all the non-stick coatings. Fissler did it long, long time ago. So it's not layered on, it's actually in the process. And it is, I want to say, for some reason, man, it just left me. I know it's titanium, but I want to say there's some ceramic in there too, but don't quote me on that. I know it's titanium, and I'll get the information to let you know exactly what material. But that's the wonderful thing about Fissler products. They're just very safety conscious, very quality conscious. Their cookware, their tools, they are a little on the high end, but they are all quality pieces of equipment, not something that you'll be replacing and buying more. So we're just going to brown the ground beef. How are our vegetables?
They're done.
Okay. So we've got our roasted vegetables here. Oh, wow, they're smelling good. And like I said, if you want them a little more blackened, ouch. I find that the USA pans don't tend to blacken as much, but just, again, turn your heat up. So I probably next time I'm going to turn the heat up just a little bit so these get a little more blackened. But there's your vegetables, and we'll actually let them serve y'all some of these to taste. Once they're, what are y'all doing over there?
I'm getting the buttermilk out. It's got a lot in it still.
Okay, all right. Okay. Is that a little oily? You want to?
A little bit.
Okay, let's get the oil out. If your meat is a little fatty, you can drain some of that fat off. Okay. And then all we're going to do now is put it in our dish. It's so funny because my family's not big casserole kind of eaters, and I've just never been one that makes casseroles.
Did you do the jack and the bean in the meat?
Oh, yep, put that back, sorry.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, sorry, we got a
We're
little bit
missing
more
something.
here. Throwing off my groove today. You're not, I am. Now, this is basically how I do my taco meat now, is I just add a little bit of water once I get it nice and browned. About a half a cup to 3/4 of a cup. Turn this back on. And taco seasoning, those packages that you buy in the store, most of them have added gluten, have MSG, have lots of additives that you just really don't like. And that's why we discovered using the Jack and the Bean dip for my taco seasoning. So this is basically the way I make taco meat or burrito meat or fajita meat, whatever you want to call it. I use this even when I'm doing chicken or beef, steak. I'll use this to stir into my meat to make my fajita seasoning. So now we're just going to let this simmer. And while it's simmering, I'll go ahead and get my biscuit dough ready. And just let it simmer so it kind of melds that flavor into the meat. And we'll make our topping. So basically, this was the idea I got. The topping is in the cookbook, my red cookbook. There's an easy drop biscuit recipe, and it's flour, baking powder, salt, oil, and milk. And so I got to thinking, why couldn't I make that topping and put it on this pot pie? So I ground some soft wheat flour, And the reason I did write the recipe in the book is because I 1.5'd the Easy Drop biscuit. It calls for 2 cups of flour, but it wasn't quite enough to put on the, this is the Mexican pot pie. So we're making the biscuit topping. It's the Easy Drop biscuit. I'm not sure what page it's on. It's under the quick breads. Okay? So it's called Easy Drop biscuits because it's basically flour, salt, baking powder, oil, milk. Is that supposed to be a cup and a half?
Yes, because the recipe calls for a cup, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's not quite a cup and a half. Okay. And then what I did to give it a little zip was I even added some of the Jack and the Bean dip to seasoning pack to my biscuit dough. Okay, so now I'll add this. And what a quick bread is a quick bread because it's basically just stir it up and you're good to go. Okay, so that was my flour. I had my baking powder and my salt already measured, and I added my 2 tablespoons of Jack and the Bean seasoning mix. And then we're going to stir in about a cup of, I'm using the peppercorn chive. You could use hot pepper jack. You could use cheddar, whatever you have on hand. Just stir that in. Okay. Now just let that sit, and we'll come back to that in just a minute. Now that our meat has simmered, really incorporated that flavor, we're going to dump it into the casserole dish. Brad and I are actually cooking for 75 young men at something called Knights Camp in a few weeks, and I'm going to make this dish for one of the lunches. Just a nice little Mexican flair dish. And I kind of slightly drain my corn. And I do buy organic corn. I would recommend getting organic corn. Corn and soybeans are the most prevalent genetically modified grains in this country. But organic, by definition, cannot be genetically modified. So on some of those things, I'm a little bit more of a stickler than others. So,
Soybeans.
soybeans, corn and soybeans. Wheat, just so you know, has not been approved to be genetically modified in this country. So I slightly rinse my black beans.
And I've even used the fresh frozen corn before.
Yeah,
if you didn't want to
I
do
have
canned, and it works just fine.
Yep, I have too, because I usually keep the fresh frozen on hand to make my cornbread that I do with the whole kernel corn.
And
So
one thing I
this is-
have discovered is definitely don't let the salsa layer be the top layer. It keeps the biscuit from completely getting done. They stay kind of gooey. So I like putting either the beans or the corn, let that be your last layer.
This is a little bigger dish than I make it in at home, so it's a little thinner, but it'll be all right. And you could really put anything else here you want. I mean, you really could. You want to put jalapenos or onions and bell peppers, the roasted vegetables, anything. Just the sky is really the limit here.
And I've done kidney beans too, and that works really well.
And then some cheese on top of this.
Now at my house, because my daughter is allergic to milk, I leave the cheese out of the dish itself and then serve it after it's finished, and I scoop everybody's plates. I will put cheese on my boys and a dollop of sour cream on the top, and leave hers without the cheese.
Okay. All right, and then what I did is I just take an ice cream scoop, and this is why Brad called it Mountains of Mexico. And my kids absolutely love this dish. And even though it's not a pressure cooking dish, it's very easy to put together, and it bakes in about 35 minutes. So by the time you get your other ingredients or a salad ready, it's ready. Table set. Just getting the table set and drinks on the table at our house used to take a while. When all 7 kids were at home, it was like, ah.
Especially when some of them wouldn't come and help.
Spoken like a true older sister. You could easily use buckwheat, and a mixture of buckwheat and corn would work very, very well. Very well. Or sorghum and corn. That would work very, very, very.
Or buckwheat and sorghum.
Or buckwheat and sorghum. Yes, absolutely. The question was, if you wanted to make it gluten-free, what could you use? Remember, gluten-free is not as big an issue when you aren't working with yeast. If it's just baking powder and salt, you can almost substitute those grains pretty easily and pretty effectively. But your corn and buckwheat, or corn and sorghum, or sorghum and buckwheat would work very, very nicely. Very nicely. You might could even use all corn there too, if you didn't even. Sure, I would probably use equal combination of buckwheat and corn. But it really doesn't matter. I mean, like I said, I think you could completely use corn. Substitute all corn for that. Okay? Maybe even all. Could you substitute all sorghum, or do you know? Can you use sorghum just like all by itself? You have not. Okay.
I've always blended with something.
Okay. Okay, so now our Mountains of Mexico, see why we called it that, is ready to go in the oven. And I think our sesame loaf is ready to come out. Let me just put this on top. I need a hot thing. Can I have this?
You need a hot thing?
I need a hot thing. Whew! All right. I do want to show y'all something. This is not part of the class, although I may let y'all have it. I'm working on it. This is my sourdough loaf. Been working on it for 2 days now, so it is ready to go in the oven. I'm very happy with how well it rose. I've started the starter, and then I put the dough proof last night, overnight, came in this morning. It had to rise again for a couple of hours, and now I'm ready to bake my loaves. Very, very happy with that.
They're done. So by the time this gets done,
Okay, let's get our sesame loaf out of the oven. I had some issues getting it off of the pan, so it kind of fell. So it's going to be more like a sesame cracker, but we're all right with that.
yeah, you probably could have left the parchment paper on there.
Yes, I think I could have. I was hoping to get that crunch of the stone, though, cooking it on the stone. That's okay. If it doesn't work, we'll do the sourdough. So.
I think lathered in that butter, it will be just fine.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yes, I even ate crackers with that butter one night. It's just the butter is so, so very delicious. Oops, that spatula, we're just having trouble with it today. All right, so there's our sesame loaf ready for the barley soup. Oh yeah, we got to put the vegetables in yet. I'm like, oh no, there's the vegetables.
We haven't served it yet. You're
Okay.
good.
All righty. All right. Well, we are ready to do the pumpkin lentil.
Well, do you want to finish the barley soup?
Yep, we can. Is it ready to finish?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One thing I'm always so impressed with Lars is how clean he keeps his cooking area. It's always nice and neat, and I feel like how many of y'all ever watched the Muppets, the Swedish Chef? Bordy, 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 borg. That's what I feel like. I go home and I'm like, how did anyone sit through that class? Never have I watched one online. I probably should because it would help me tremendously to correct things, but it's too depressing. I just cry. Like, how? Do what? Oh, thank you. You're so sweet. You're
I'm glad
so
somebody
sweet.
does.
Spoken like a true older daughter. You're just covering all the bases today.
Yep.
So we're just going to finish up letting out the last little bit of pressure. I do want to call your attention to something, and you can either come up here at the end of class and feel it, or that we've got some out in the store. What I'm standing on is called a wellness mat. It's these mats I found at the International Houseware Show in Chicago. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. When Brad and I stepped into their booth, I was like, what is this? After walking on concrete floor all day. And so I decided just about a month or so ago that I wanted to bring them in here. So many of us cook and stand on our feet all day. But I'm telling you, the first class I used it in was the Getting Started class, which I get here at 7 in the morning and start prepping, and that class goes till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I am on my feet back here the whole time. Usually when I go home, I'm literally laying in bed like moaning because my legs hurt so bad. Even though I'm exhausted, it's very hard to sleep because my legs from just being up here and standing. And I go home and I have a dresser that sits right beside my bed at the head of my bed. So I turn around and stick my feet up against the dresser so they're completely like straight up in the air. And I just lay there. And I noticed that when I went home after that class, well, it actually wasn't until Ashley was telling somebody about the wellness class that Monday following the class on Saturday. And I went, oh my gosh, I didn't go home and just be in misery and pain. And actually, Brad and I even went somewhere the next day. Usually I just have to crash for a day because my legs just are so tired. It really, really makes a difference. I don't know how many of you, stand that much in your kitchen at home, but if you have a job or a place or somewhere that you are on your feet a lot, it's amazing. It's amazing. They're expensive. The small ones are about $119. The big one, like I have here, the 6-foot one, is $239, I think. Might be vice versa there. But they have a 7-year warranty. So it's not like something you're going to buy and next year have to replace, like a lot of the mats and things that you... they're completely, you don't throw them in the washer because they're this rubber and they're like about that thick. But you can clean them, mop them, and they have a beveled edge so that they're easy to clean around and step around and you don't trip on them, they don't curl. I'm sorry, you could put a rug over it, definitely. Absolutely, you could put a rug over it. But you really, they're out there at the cash wrap now when you step on them. A lot of you, I've seen your face, you go, what is this? Exactly how I did in Chicago. So I just encourage you, if you stand a lot, it's pretty amazing. They're called wellness mats because they're for anti-fatigue and just keeping the stress off of your legs. And Ashley and I both feel like they're even more comfortable barefooted. You know, I cannot, I mean, when I go to cook in my kitchen, first thing I put on is my tennis shoes. And, you know, because I just can't stand around in my kitchen barefooted, even though I have a rug at my sink and everything. But these actually feel better, even barefooted. You really feel the cushioning on your feet. So I encourage you to try it. All right, so there's our beef and barley soup. Let's see. The barley looks like it got done.
Oh, yeah, it's done.
Okay. Yeah, totally done. Look at, see how the barley puffs up there? Okay.
Hot. It's going to be hot.
I know.
It's going to burn herself.
One thing about soups or any food cooked in the pressure cooker, very, very hot. For every degree of pressure that you take it up, it raises the boiling point of water so many degrees. So that's how you're cooking fast. Not only is it pressurized, but you are actually cooking at a hotter temperature. So you're going to find that the food stays hot. A lot of times I'll go ahead and dip the soup and then call everybody to the table. Whereas usually you're like, hurry up before the food gets cold. Not to worry with the pressure cooker.
All right, seasoning and then this.
Mm-hmm. We're adding just a little bit of, that was what, nutmeg or something.
Oh, it smells like it.
I hope you didn't just add what I was making for the, where'd you get that?
It came from the tray with
Okay,
the,
all right, we're okay, we're good. Never fear. About one whole onion, a nice medium-sized onion. You know, there again with soup, I love Lars Liebisch, the German chef. His famous saying is, recipes are just a suggestion, just a starting point. Don't go, how much, you know, never, especially with soup, you don't typically ever have to measure. I mean, you might have to, you don't want to go putting 20 onions in there in the same amount of broth, but it was one nice size onion. Okay, I think it needs a little more salt. And this is our ground salt, our coarse grind, and I'm grinding it with our wonderful Vic Firth grinders here. A little pepper. And it calls for a little bit of thyme. So I've got some fresh thyme here. We'll just pick some off. This was cheaper than buying the little packages of thyme. And my thyme in my garden got overtaken by my rosemary. Rosemary's about as bad as mint. It's now a rosemary tree. If you've never grown rosemary, you should just stick a little pot in, and it is huge. And it stays good all winter. It doesn't seem to be affected by the cold. So just strip it backwards. Drop the thyme in. Just those little leaves. It's a little hard, a little tedious to strip. It actually strips better when it's dry. I love thyme. Wish I had more of it. Okay. A little bit more since it's fresh. Usually takes a little more of your fresh herbs than your dry herbs, because your dry herbs are concentrated. Okay. Alrighty. Check one more time the taste. About double dip there on you. Y'all would hate me, wouldn't you? Be my dinner tonight. Wow, that's good, but I think it still could use just a tad more salt. That's a big pot of soup. Okay. Okay, I don't want to get too salty. All right, you're going to love the melding of the nutmeg and the cinnamon. And if you don't like the nutmeg and cinnamon, leave it out. I think this dish would be totally delicious without it. But it really is nice with those roasted vegetables in there, that warm flavor. And nutmeg and cinnamon, those again are nice warming holiday, kind of bring back good memories, eggnog,
Let it cool for just a minute.
gingerbread, sugar cookies, you know, they bring some great memories there. All righty. Did y'all have the roasted vegetables? Is that what you had? How'd you like them? Now, I don't know. Did you know what you were eating? Which ones were which? The flat white ones were the turnips and the parsnips. The smaller round ones would be the parsnips. The bigger white ones would be the turnips. I was never a fan. And aren't they delicious, roasted? The bell peppers and the butternut squash. Well, you didn't have butternut squash. It's in the soup. Those are definitely one of my favorites. And the onions. Like I said, I think in these ovens with the USA pans, I think I could have gone up to 500 on that. Then I would have gotten a little more charring on those peppers. Really nice. And they look burned and you're like, they actually taste delicious when they've got a little bit of that blackening and that charring. Okay? All right. Next recipe, we are going to do the pumpkin lentil soup. I did not have the butternut squash in the vegetables. It is in the soup vegetables, okay? Yeah. And just so you know, those roasted vegetables are just as good cold as they are hot. So you could even put them on a salad, put them on top of a pizza. Lots of ways you can use those.
Pasta primavera type dish.
Yeah.
You could do that cold.
Like these are the ones I did yesterday. Totally could eat it cold, put on a salad. Grilled cheese on a piece of, between bread, put the roasted vegetables in there. Be so yummy. But pizza, my son Caleb, when he makes pizza, he loves to roast the peppers before he puts them on. I just chop the raw and put them on. But the roasted are amazing to do that. So use those roasted vegetables. So do a lot. If you've got pans big enough, go ahead and do them a lot. Just remember, don't pile them high or they'll steam instead of roast, all right? Okay. All right, we are ready to move to the pumpkin lentil soup. I've got a copy here.
Do you? Okay. You have the fig too?
Yes.
Do we need to get that in the oven
Yes,
first?
we need to get the fig fennel cornbread in the oven first. Let me turn this oven down. Now for the cornbread, I'm a real southerner, so typically at home I make my cornbread in an iron skillet, and it calls for butter in the recipe, and usually it tells you to grease your pan. So what I always do is I go ahead and just put my butter, all of it that I'm going to use in the recipe, just put it in my dish, pop it in my oven, and let the dish get hot and the butter melt in the oven, and then I'll add my melted butter right at the last minute and then pour my cornbread into the hot dish. Does that make sense? And it gives it that nice crispier crust on the outside. So that's just a little trick for you there. You probably already knew that trick, didn't you? But it never hurts.
That's also a very southern way of doing cobblers, is to put your butter in your dish and preheat it, and then you put, typically a southern cobbler, you put you pour the batter over the hot butter and then spoon your fruit in on top, and all the fruit sinks to the bottom and the crust rises to the top.
All right.
We do things backwards. What can we say?
Let's
Tastes better that way.
mix up our cornbread. Now, like I said, this is a very, very uniquely flavored dish. You want to go ahead and put in your, and the recipe is on page 101 in the Shamrock and Peach book. For copyright reasons, we didn't type these recipes out if they're in a book that we sell. So I'm just going to tell you, and I don't know if Ashley wrote the differences that we did here, but the recipe in the book calls for a cup and a half of.
I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't for these two. I only did for the caramel
It calls
sauce.
for a cup and a half of all-purpose and a cup of stone ground, so corn. So I did the cup of corn, and a cup and a half of soft wheat flour. You could certainly use, if you're going gluten-free, you could certainly use buckwheat or sorghum here. It's a nice combination. Buckwheat is really nice actually with your corn. You could use barley flour, spelt flour. Kamut would probably work very, very well here as well.
Oh, your mic just went out.
You want, Johnny, you want to check you got me on?
It is working? Oh, okay. It all of a sudden stopped in here, though.
I don't think check your button down there at the bottom. Yeah, I'm not on in here. I'm not on in here. Now I am.
It is.
Okay, there you go. Okay, so it's 2 tablespoons of sugar. And I actually, instead of sugar, you could do honey granules, but I actually did honey. And so you want to, go ahead and put your dries in. So I add my honey when I put my liquids in. So you're going to do 2 teaspoons of baking powder and a half a teaspoon of salt. I use 2 tablespoons of honey. I did go ahead to get the sweetness. Okay, so you stir in your dry ingredients. I could be cutting figs while you're...
Yes, you could.
Yes, I could.
Yes, you could.
All right, so go ahead and put your liquids in. We'll squeeze our 2 tablespoons of honey. Really measure very carefully. You all know to do that, remember? Okay. Figs. I really, really wanted to do a fig recipe for this class. We always think of pumpkins and apples and all those wonderful squash and all those wonderful dishes and foods for fall, but most of us maybe don't realize that figs are actually are in season in the fall, and they are so very nutritious. These are your black mission figs. There are several varieties. The black mission figs are typically the dark purple ones. They're a little sweeter. You can go ahead and mix that up.
It was buttermilk, right? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. 1 cup of buttermilk. And then we're going to add a cup of cheese. And with fennel and the figs.
But figs are, like most of your fruits, very high in potassium, very high in fiber. I think 3 figs have like 7 grams of fiber. So very high in fiber, very good for you. You can dry them. Most of us are familiar with dried figs, fig Newtons. In the Christmas class, I'm probably going to do these fig bars that are absolutely delicious, made with the dry figs. But in this class, I really wanted to go with the
figs, right?
What?
There was a customer that came in.
Yay! How many of y'all signed up? It went out yesterday, and I think within about an hour of putting it on there, we had 20-something people signed up. Now there's 40-something? Oh, wow. But all I'm doing here is cutting my figs into quarters. Go ahead and add Yep, go ahead and add your fennel. And then the butter should be melted now.
Because you actually push those down, right?
Yep, so there are my figs. Now, one thing you must know about figs, they're very delicate. They spoil very, very quickly. So you want to buy them, if you're going to buy them fresh like that. The dried ones, of course, last for a long, long time. And I'm sure that's why they started drying figs, so that because they're pretty prolific on the tree, and but they go bad so very quickly. So drying is a way of preserving them.
Yes, this customer right here apparently has more figs than she knows what to do with.
Dry them, dehydrate them. And you can make it, there's a jelly you can make out of them that's so delicious. Oh, wow. But dehydrating them is fabulous.
All right, so there's our dish with our butter.
Wait, oh, you got the butter? Okay. All right, so now I just pour the melted butter into the dough. Oops, that looks like a little piece of paper.
Good job.
Sorry.
Nice snag.
And then I leave a little bit of butter in there So the recipe called for like a 1/4 cup, I think, and I used 6 tablespoons, so 2 tablespoons to butter the dish.
And what it is the recipe calls for a 1/4 cup of oil in the cornbread. And so we just melted the butter. We used melted butter instead of the oil and did it right here in the dish.
Okay, so now we're just going to spread the cornbread into the dish. And then it says just poke the figs in a circular kind of fashion. I think I started. I think I would soak them and rehydrate them. Her question is, can you use dehydrated figs? I would definitely soak them. I used corn and soft wheat. Okay. It calls for a tablespoon. You're going to taste it. Like I said, I served it last night and my son goes, okay, what is this? You've never made cornbread like this before. And, but we were eating it. I can't remember what we were having with it. The flavor mixes very well with the lentil soup that we're going to serve. I'll tell you that. It's just very, very nice. But I think you could easily leave out the fennel if you don't like the fennel. But fennel is actually, I found it very interesting that things like fennel, cumin, and ginger are very good herbs for digestion. And isn't it interesting that we typically see cumin particularly used in beans? So this is just, it's really nice to add these aromatic herbs to your dishes. Make sure everybody gets some. There we go.
Oh, you can't just leave one.
I didn't see it. It was hiding.
It was fennel seeds.
It was fennel seeds.
Fennel seeds.
Yep. Which you could powder them if you wanted to, or put them in the Tri-Best so they're not quite so chunky. But it didn't say to, so I just used the whole seeds.
This bottom one, Mom? Or the top
I
one?
think I've got the top one ready.
How long does it bake?
35 minutes. Or 25. Sorry. Shoot me now. And you know what? It actually says at 400. So go ahead. Yep. I'm going to take the temperature back up.
Okay.
Okay. Now let's get our soup ready. See, now isn't it funny, because typically conventional soups, you typically get the soup started because it's going to take several hours and then you add your bread. But with pressure cookers, you want to do your bread, get it in the oven, because your soup's not going to take more than about 30 minutes. So little conditioning there, that, you know, menu planning and mealtime planning to work out your so that your food all comes out at the same time. But even if you let your soup cook first and then make your bread, it's going to stay hot. And especially if you let it naturally release, a big pot of soup's typically going to take 15 to 20 minutes for the pressure to come down. So I've used some red onions here, right? It does call for onions, right?
Yes, it does.
What? No, Y'all know my trick. When you've had a really bad day, like a really, really bad day, and your husband is about home, about to walk in the door, just start sauteing onions and garlic. If you are clueless what you're going to have for dinner, just start sauteing onions and garlic, and he'll walk in and go, oh man, it smells so good, I can't wait for dinner. And you're like, I can't either, don't have a clue what we're having, but we're having sauteed onions, I know that. But it can't hurt, just start doing it. I mean, you know, and even if you, I don't know, put them in a scrambled egg, or pancakes would be great. But anyway, but it's a little trick that I learned from a wise woman years ago. She said, just start sauteing onions and they will never know the difference.
What we're doing now is the October Glory Pumpkin and Lentil Soup from Judith's cookbook, The Shamrock and the Peach. It's on page 99. I actually did this for the first time last Thanksgiving. I tried it, and the recipe calls for, peeled pumpkin or a can of pumpkin puree. And there's another recipe that we do at Thanksgiving. They're these sweet potato biscuits is what they are, that you use cooked sweet potatoes and then you mash them and you make these biscuits with them. Well, I had some sweet potato left over and I had some pumpkin left over that I had cooked to make pumpkin pie with. And so I actually used part sweet potato, part pumpkin in this recipe, and it worked just as well. Now, in Judith's cookbook, she has you soaking the lentils, for several hours beforehand, but you don't need to do that since you're cooking them all in the pressure cooker, just like this.
And lentils are one of those beans that just really does not take a very long time to cook. So,
do you need this to peel a little off, or are you good?
I don't usually even peel mine.
Oh, okay. Well, then don't.
Well, she says to, doesn't she? It's a suggestion. I'm going to follow her suggestion. I don't usually peel my ginger root. I just use it. If you've never used fresh ginger, oh my, you're in for a really wonderful treat. How much is it supposed to be?
It is a teaspoon.
Okay. Okay. I think that's it. Okay.
And then it's a cup of lentils.
And like I said, you could totally have cooked this pumpkin on the side because the recipe calls for a cup of mashed pumpkin or a 16-ounce can. Or you can use the pound of peeled pumpkin. And I like peeling it and going on and cooking it in here in the broth with the lentils. This is one of the few times that I will go ahead and peel and process the pumpkin before I cook it so that it cooks in the broth. That's 4 cups. Just pour it in and we'll add an extra cup of water. So I'm going to use, it calls for 5 cups of vegetable broth. Instead of opening another container of vegetable broth and then having 3 cups sitting there open, I'm going to use, this is a quart, and we'll use the cup of water.
And then we've got, our pumpkin is already in there. Now, her recipe calls for soft brown sugar.
That's surely an Irish term. Never heard of such a thing. But.
And then some of her other recipes will call for light brown sugar. In those instances, I will, to whatever the amount is, which in this case, it's a half a cup of soft brown sugar is what it's calling for. We've used a 1/4 cup of sucanat and a 1/4 cup of the honey granules to kind of cut that molasses flavor.
So it's not so strong like a dark brown sugar. Does the seasoning go in now too? Sure. And then this is your cinnamon, your nutmeg, and your, I don't know if the
Salt and pepper.
Oh, okay.
Does it have it in there?
No.
No.
Okay. Okay, so now
the cinnamon and nutmeg is a teaspoon of cinnamon and a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. But I'm telling you right now, her cookbook, in my opinion, of course next to Mom's cookbook, but her cookbook as far as recipes go for dinner and things like that is by far the best cookbook that we have out there on the shelf. It takes some converting, because she calls for white flour and white sugar and things like that. It's very simple to convert her recipes, and honestly, every single thing that we have ever made in her cookbook has been fantastic. My kids absolutely love everything out of it, and it's also the most gorgeous cookbook you will ever own. It has beautiful pictures. She typically has a story before every single recipe that talks about her heritage, or the recipe was her grandmother's, or her memories involving that recipe. So it's an absolutely incredible cookbook. So, and if you purchase it and you end up coming back to her Christmas class that she and I are going to do together, definitely bring your cookbook, because she will be happy to sign it for you. It's a wonderful Christmas gift, though, for friends that like to cook. It's incredible.
Her husband's a photographer, and the pictures are beautiful. Just absolutely beautiful. I fell in love with her cookbook. I fell in love with Judith. I actually fell in love with Judith before I really sat down and looked at the cookbook. And it was about a week into it when I realized it was white flour, white sugar. And I'd already told her, yes, I want to carry your cookbook. And I was like, uh-oh. So anyway, but you can just easily convert it. Judith is just a fabulous, wonderful Christian lady, just has a real heart to just encourage women and families to come back to family and mealtime. And she actually is taking a tour to Ireland in May. So y'all might want to check out her website, Shamrock and Peach. No, the Ulster Kitchen, I think is her website. So anyway, she's just a great, great lady.
They've had the bread, and I think they might have had the soup, it looks like, too.
You had the sesame bread? How was it? Did you see the texture? A little different texture. Now, I hope it didn't get too done, because it got kind of thin when I pushed it off. But that's what Maria says in her book. You can't mess this bread up. I mean, you just can't. It's just going to come out nicely. And how'd you like the butter? The cultured butter? Was that just not delicious to actually have some flavor there, a little tartness, and you just had your good dose of good probiotics, good bacteria to get that gut going? So anyway.
They had the soup, too.
Huh?
They had the soup, too.
Okay, and you like the soup? Yeah. That's a nice, hearty, filling, very filling soup. Okay? All right, so while our October Glory pumpkin and lentil soup is
and let's tell them real quick, because the recipe says to cover it and bring it to a boil and cook for 30 minutes. But we don't have to do that with the pressure cooker. The pumpkin only takes 6 to 7 minutes, those big chunks to cook. Lentils take, remind me.
6 minutes, five
about
or six minutes.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to pressure this. I'm going to bring it up to pressure, and I'm going to pressure it for 10 minutes just to be on the safe side to make sure everything's done. And then we're going to use our immersion blender to blend the whole thing up, and then we'll add a little bit of heavy cream at the very end. And we'll serve this along with the fig and fennel cornbread. But like I said, you can use sweet potato. I think you could probably use any type of root vegetable. You could do butternut squash, and that's what you were testing a recipe. Is that why we decided to do this one? You were testing some type of pumpkin soup recipe.
Oh, yeah.
And it didn't taste that great. And I'm like, well, Judith has a pumpkin and lentil soup in her cookbook. And Mom was like, oh, Mom hadn't done that recipe before.
Yeah,
and so we switched over and did that one, because it's very, very tasty. And you get a grain in there, too, which is nice.
Yeah. All righty. What's next on
your
our
whole
list?
pumpkin is done over there. I don't know if you want to show them that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes, the pumpkin is chunked, and go ahead and peel it, since we're going to puree the whole thing. That is the one time where Mom does peel the pumpkin before cooking it, is because it's going in the soup, and we're just going to blend it all up.
Right. And like I said, you can totally, like Ashley told you earlier, she used cooked sweet potato. Right?
I did sweet potato.
So you
and
could
pumpkin.
use whatever you have on hand left over there.
You could do
or you
butternut
can use
squash.
Can
you could
or
do,
butter. Yeah.
Yeah. Any of those root vegetables, I think you could do just fine.
It's a 16-ounce can.
No,
yes.
go ahead. I would go ahead and add it here.
I think you add it. Hang on. Let me see. Yeah, you do add the pumpkin in there.
Yeah, go ahead and add it in. That way it infuses all of the flavor with the cinnamon and the nutmeg and the lentils and everything. And I know y'all probably are like, okay, is this like going to be a sweet soup? There is a hint of sweetness to it, but those lentils really bring out almost a peppery, earthy flavor to them, especially with the vegetable stock.
Green.
Yeah, we used the green lentils in this one.
Okay. But you could certainly use any. I mean, the yellow, or I'm even wondering if you could use split peas. I think you could use the yellow split peas would make it would of course be really yellow and golden color. But I think you could do anything. Remember, this is a suggestion. but any similar type pea. And well, Sharon in her class did a pumpkin and white bean soup. So you really could use most anything there. Would you bring me the salad? The Mountains of Mexico, the Mexican pot pie is almost ready. And I served it the night I made it with this yummy, yummy, yummy mango corn cucumber salad with a lime vinaigrette dressing, and it's got basil in it, fresh basil. And what you do, you go ahead and make the salad up. It's right there. It's the next recipe after the Mexican pot pie. Now I'm going to tell you, these mangoes could have been a little riper, but they were the only 3 mangoes that they had at the store, so I just couldn't be choosy. So I took them, and now what I'm going to do is the lettuce over there.
No, it's right here.
Oh, got hidden here. Use
lemon
what?
Pepper, lemon pepper
Oh,
with the roasted
absolutely.
vegetables.
Anything works. So now I just add my lettuce in the to the salad. You could certainly mound the lettuce on the plate and then just dip the salad on. You're going to be so surprised at this salad.
And then I've also done the Mexican pot pie with brown rice and red bell pepper that I just cooked in the pressure cooker for 20 minutes, and that was really good with a little bit of cumin, salt and pepper, and chicken broth.
Okay.
Nope, I did that, but I did the rice and I did the refried beans on the side. So did traditional rice and beans that you would normally
Oh, you mean served it as a side dish.
Served it as a side dish. Rice and red bell peppers, and then the refried beans on the side of that, and then that with a little cheese and a little sour cream on top.
All right. So as soon as our Mountains of Mexico comes out of the oven, we will serve you the Mexican pot pie, and it's probably ready, don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
You want to put it right here so they can see? There. Isn't that beautiful? And then serve it with your mango salad, or like I said, we do, even though it has salsa, I chop some tomatoes and we put a little sour cream on the side. Your cultured sour cream would be so good with this. Wouldn't that be delicious? So there you go, your Mexican pot pie. So easy to put together. I don't normally keep canned vegetables around, but I've started just having those black beans and the corn. Well, like I said, I always have frozen corn, and I've used it. I just run it under some hot water to thaw it, and then just throw it in there. And then, of course, if you've seen the canning class, you know I can beans. So, but I went back to my stash back there, and I had used all the black beans, so I only had kidney beans, which I could have used. So anyway.
Well, I think when I was taping this,
that's what you had?
I did kidney beans. And I didn't realize it till I opened the jar. Which, be on the lookout. We're really excited about something new that's going to be coming. I've already filmed 3 meals, I guess. But we're going to start uploading these complete meal ideas and product demonstrations. I'm shooting for like 20 minutes long, and we're going to start uploading them soon. We're working on editing them and putting the finishing touches on them. But the plan is to upload a video one a week. So I'm really, really excited, and this is actually one of the featured recipes that I've already filmed. So just some quick tips and some practical ideas, and just to give you another meal to add to your menu. Because I mean, I don't know if you guys are like us, but I mean, we kind of get in a rut of eating the same thing over and over. And most of the time it's because of my kids. That's what they want. And so we just end up eating the same, like 5 things every week. So anyway, so hopefully it'll give you some new ideas. But I did some yummy soups and the Mexican pot pie as well. And when I filmed it, that's what happened. I was in the middle of filming, and I opened the jar of canned beans from the back, and I went, Oh, kidney. Okay, we can use kidney in this recipe. So 'cause while you're filming, you're kind of stuck. So
Yeah.
So that's it's timing.
Oh, so the pressure's up and it's timing.
Yep.
And why is it on 8?
It's already been timing.
I know, but I thought we were just doing it 6 minutes.
Oh. I thought you said.
Did I? I didn't mean
No.
10.
No,
meant
I said
6.
10.
Oh, 6.
6 for the pumpkin and the lentils?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
The nice thing about pressure cooking is should you open it and it's not done, give it a stir, put the lid back on, the pressure will pop right back up, turn it on, pressure it 1 or 2 minutes again, okay? So that's the nice thing about pressure cooking. That's, you know, if it's not quite done, then it just doesn't take that much. It's not like, oh, okay, now we're gonna be waiting again, you know? So, all right, here's our pumpkin that is cooked completely, and the hardest part about this now is getting it out of here. I think actually 10 minutes might be a little long. I couldn't remember, and yesterday I did it 10, and I really meant to back off to about 8 today because it's very tricky to get out of the pressure cooker, but we're going to do it. I actually did. That's what I did yesterday. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Good thing I'm strong. That sucker landed in there and it kind of jerked my arm a little bit.
All right. So let's.
It's done, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. And now I think if you totally let it cool a little bit more so you can handle it, it'll be a lot easier to deal with. Here we go. So we're just going to let it cool a little bit, and I'll show you. But basically what we're going to do is cut it open. You can pull that out. I mean, that comes right off. And this, when it's cool enough, will actually peel right off. So
Without burning yourself.
yeah. And another almost easier way than dealing with this, because now we still got to deal with the seeds and all, but I actually cut a pumpkin and I have one of these and I had cut it in half, which by the way, the pumpkin in this recipe is about a half of one of these size pumpkins, just so you know. The pie pumpkin, that makes about a pound of pumpkin. So don't even worry about measuring too much there or weighing, or if you don't have a scale. But so I had half of that pumpkin left over, and so I just did the same thing. I put the water in the bottom and the trivet in the bottom, put the pumpkin in face side down, and then just pressured it for 6 minutes since it was just a half a pumpkin. It was so hilarious. I went and I let it naturally release and just let it sit there and cool down just the whole day. I just sat it there, and the last thing I did before I was leaving that day was I opened it up, and it was cool enough to the touch. It was completely cool. And I reached in to pick it up, and the whole shell came right off in my hand and left this mound of cooked pumpkin. So I was like, well, that was easy. So I almost think that might be even easier than dealing with this, is to cook that half a pumpkin down like that. So I was like, okay, I'll remember that next time. So that was nice. All right, what we got going on now?
Nothing, we only have about 4 more minutes on the
Okay.
cornbread and 2 minutes left on the pumpkin and lentil. Do you want to, were you going to make the croutons in front of them, or do you want to just tell them what you did?
I just, this is served, oh, I've got the cream. I can make that. It says to serve it with a little dollop of creme fraiche, which is basically sour cream, kind of?
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much?
It's typically not quite as sour as sour cream, but I think your cultured cream would be really nice because there's a little bit of tartness to it, or just regular old sour cream works just fine.
Well, what I used, you ready for what I used?
Sure.
Drained yogurt.
That works too.
Yep. So what I did was I drained some yogurt so it would give me the sour cream texture. And then I'm going to where my little bowl is that I have for that. Okay, so the cream fresh, we're going to use just a few tablespoons of this.
What's that? The creme fraiche is the garnish on top of the soup.
And then I've got a lemon here that I'm going to squeeze. And when my lemons are extra big and if they have a point on them, I'll cut that point off and I'll use my orange squeezer to squeeze the juice out of the lemon. Might need just a little bit more so we'll have plenty for everybody.
This is all in Judith's cookbook. This is the garnish and everything for the soup.
Just
The
for
shamrock and peach.
kind of for effect, we're gonna which here's the parsley that was supposed to go over the roasted vegetable soup. But just to do pretty, we'll show you. And I'm gonna taste this.
Pot pie. Yes. The Mexican pot pie is in your handout. Yep. That was one that was perfected from a magazine recipe. Did y'all enjoy that?
Or you haven't had it yet. They're different.
No, they are. Some of them.
Some of them have
Some
had
of
it.
them are. The ones that are
It's very, very, very kid friendly. Very kid friendly.
Yeah, it has quickly become one of my kids' favorite meals to eat.
Yeah.
And it is so easy. It's definitely one of those things where you could brown your ground beef and build it all with the beans and the corn and everything and put it in your freezer and then bring it out.
Absolutely.
Or prep it all in the morning where all you have to do left is put the drop biscuits on top. Very, very easy. And also, if you use the little small cookie scoops, I found that works really well because the layer, if you do it in a 9x13 dish, the meat and the beans and everything is about this thick. And then if you use the small cookie scoop to scoop out your drop biscuits, they end up only being about this tall. So it's all very evenly proportioned. The salsa is just one of the layers. So you got your beef layer, then I like to do the beef and then the salsa, then the corn and then the beans, and then put your, if you want to do cheese, you would do it at that point, and then your biscuits on top. I just found that the salsa and then the biscuit on top of the salsa, it made the biscuit soggy and it took longer to get done.
I need that pressure cooker.
Yes, ma'am.
The one that's that size.
Can you freeze the roasted vegetables after you roast them?
I guess you can. I don't know what they would come out. Peppers, I'm not a real fan of frozen peppers. They come out kind of watery. I don't know how they would come out. I mean, try it. Try a little bowl and, when you have some left over and just stick it in there for a couple of days and then bring it out. Yes. Vacuum seal it if you've got a vacuum sealer system.
Will you check the
Yep.
cornbread?
I'm going to take it up a notch. Just put it, I need the pressure cooker, the one that looks like that. Is it in there?
Also, this recipe, the other part of the garnish that goes with this soup recipe is a cinnamon crouton. And Mom just, the other day when we made it, and did you use it, the same ones you made?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
We used the seed bread, the crunchy seed bread that the bakery makes, that our bakery makes. And then she mixed the softened butter with a little bit of cinnamon and a little bit of sucanat. And then she spread that on each piece of toast and then just broiled it, really, and toasted it in the oven.
Just toasted it, yeah. And then just cut it into squares.
Cut it into squares to make your croutons.
Ooh, I'm getting a little steam bath here.
I know, right? Here, we'll turn it that way a little bit.
Yes.
Huh?
No, it should be one like this. Oh, you know what? Never mind. I found it.
It's right here.
Sorry, Maggie. It's behind me. I knew I had used it and it was dirty, so that's why I thought I had sent it on. Okay. Do you want to set that here?
I'll trade with you, yes.
All right. And we will move on.
Well, now that I'm done. Can y'all tell that it is boiling in there?
While she finishes that up, how many of you have ever eaten a spaghetti squash? Oh man, okay, so all of you, most all of you.
They're
Well,
way cooler than us.
I know. Well, Pooh, I don't even know if I want to do a spaghetti squash. They're so cool. Are you ready for this though? See this? Yeah. How cool is that?
Do you have water in the bottom?
Yes, I do. Water in the bottom, just like the pumpkin. The trivet, and we're going to cook it. Bring it up to pressure. Cook it for about 10 to 15 minutes, somewhere in there. 10 wasn't quite enough. 15 may be too much, so just, you know, but err on the side of too much with this because you don't want to get it out and it not be done. So we'll go ahead with the spaghetti squash, and I've got some meat sauce over there for you. Stick blender for pureeing is fabulous. You could certainly ladle this into a blender and puree it. Sharon, this is for the pumpkin soup.
This is definitely a very thick soup because once you blend up those lentils and especially the pumpkin, the starchiness from both of those really thickens the soup. And I actually like it a lot over the fig fennel cornbread. That was heavy whipping cream. Heavy cream, yep.
How are we coming there?
Almost done. I see a few more chunkies that are trying to escape me. Biggest thing is don't pick it up while it's still spinning.
You want to do this. You want to do that. You think, surely I need to do that. Oh, the cornbread was done. I about forgot. Got a few more lentils that are trying to Here's the fig fennel cornbread. All right. You should always taste your food right before you serve to see if there's any adjusting that you need to do to salt, pepper, seasoning, whatever. Wow. I don't know. Maybe a tiny bit. That's not nearly as much as it sounds like. Okay. All right. So, let me get me the cream and the bread thing. So here's our soup. You just want to ladle it. And just take a small little dollop of your cream. It doesn't take a lot. And just swirl it in the middle. And then a couple of little bread cubes. And there's your soup. Okay? So we will be serving that with the fig fennel cornbread. And I'll be eating this shortly.
I know. I had barley soup set aside, and it's disappeared. Thievery. Oh, okay. That works. That works too.
How'd you like the mango salad? Did you love that? It's so easy to make. And it says to chill it for a couple of hours. I actually tried the recipe when I put the Mexican pot pie in the oven, so it really only chilled for just a few hours. It was still just delicious. And I've almost had it where everything was cold and we just used it and it was fabulous. Fabulous. What a nice combination of that basil and the lime vinaigrette. Okay, so my pressure is up to the second ring. So I'm just going to turn it down to maintain pressure, and then I'm going to go about 10 or 12 minutes here. Actually, about 12. One thing about pressure cooking, like I think Ashley was explaining, if the pressure is up, it is cooking. Even if I take this off the stove, when the pressure is up, it's still cooking in there. The temperature is still hot in there. So that's one thing you can also do, like the pasta dishes that I did in the class on Saturday. They say to cook them for 5 minutes and quick release it. Well, I cook it for 3 minutes and then just let it naturally release. So there's things that you can do like that. And so know if you're going to let it naturally release, that some things you might be able to back off on the actual cooking time. Once again, soups, stews, things like that, I just cook them and I pretty much just set them off and forget about it while I set the table, make the bread, you know, do the other things that we need to do. It's going to stay hot for a long, long time. So there's just some little tricks of pressure cooking that you can learn. All right. So that's our spaghetti squash. And what we're going to do when it's done is we will, those who has not had spaghetti squash before? Oh, wow, that was better. It's weird. You know why it's called spaghetti squash? Because it looks like noodles when you cook it. And when you string it out, instead of pumpkin is a little stringy, can be, but it pretty much mushes up. Your spaghetti squash really comes out like noodles. And so we're going to serve it to you today with just some old-fashioned meat sauce, spaghetti sauce, tomato sauce. And the recipe for this meat sauce that we're serving, I didn't make. Denise that works here and teaches classes, she actually made it in another class. It is from the What the Bible Says About Healthy Living. It's from that cookbook. And it is one of our favorite meat sauces. Denise had an old favorite, and once she made it from that cookbook, she went, okay, this is my new meat sauce. And it's just real easy, real delicious. Once again, everything in that cookbook that I've ever tried is very, very delicious, very easy, very practical. That's the What the Bible Says About Healthy Living cookbook. All right. Next on the agenda, we need to move to desserts, okay? You ready for dessert? No chocolate today, but lots of apples and pumpkin. Where would we be without apples and pumpkin? Really? Can you believe it? So I'm going to do one thing that is excellent to do in the pressure cooker is anything that needs to be steamed. So your baked custards, your flans, your cheesecakes, those are so easy and quick to do in the pressure cooker, and you can do them in about half the time or even less. So I'm going to do for you today pumpkin custard, and I'll show you how to make them, but then I made them yesterday so they would be chilled ready. I actually ate it warm, and I thought, I like egg custard warm. I thought it was delicious, but I made it yesterday so it would be chilled for you today. So let me get a pot. Here it is. So all you're going to do with the mini pumpkin custard, and that recipe is in your handout. So you just need to heat, it calls for a half a cup of half and half, and a half a cup of heavy whipping cream. And I will tell you that this makes 4 small custards. You can definitely double this recipe, and it comes out just fine. Sometimes with custards and lemon curds and things like that, I find that doubling the recipe for some reason just doesn't work. I don't know why. A lot of recipes are very easy to double. My lemon curd recipe, I tried to double it, and it would never set up and become, custard texture. But this recipe, I did double it yesterday, and it worked out just fine. So you want to heat your whipping cream and your half and half. One thing I learned from Lars, whenever you're going to heat milk, always wet your pot first. So just run some water in there and dump it out. And you want to start with a wet pot, and that will keep your milk from scalding to the bottom of the pan. I mean, of course, if you turn it on high heat and just let it go forever, yes, it will. But it really cuts down that. Okay, so it says to heat your half and half in your milk until it bubbles. And then it calls for egg yolks. And the original recipe actually called for actually called for sugar here and the maple syrup. And I found that the honey granules made it way too sweet. So just know, though, that if you taste the custard today and you think that it could be sweeter, you could add a little bit of honey granules in here. But when I was testing the recipe, I just found that it just tasted like sugar to me. And when I made it yesterday with eliminating the honey granules, it was just fine. Okay, so my egg yolks. Somebody showed me a trick for separating eggs.
Oh, it was me. It was with the water bottle.
How did we do it?
Well, I don't have a bottle that's almost empty. Have y'all seen that on YouTube? Is that not the weirdest thing? Okay, you take, you break your egg onto a plate, is what you do, and you take an empty water bottle and you turn it upside down and you squeeze it, and then hold it over the yolk and let go of the water bottle, and it sucks the yolk up right into the bottle, and then you can move it over and you just squeeze again and it pushes it out onto another dish. It doesn't break the yolk.
It is hilarious.
I did it like 5 times back and forth showing everybody before the yolk finally busted. But yeah, it worked great. And I can't remember if I tried it. I might have even tried it in a bowl where I had broken a bunch of eggs into a bowl and then just individually sucked all the yolks out. It's the coolest thing ever.
I was looking for you yesterday, and you were gone to lunch or something, and I was like,
Yeah.
Ashley, what was that trick of separating the eggs?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, so now then we just put our cinnamon and our, it says a dash of salt, nutmeg, and cloves. And so this is my cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves and salt. I'm just going to add it to my yolks. And then I'm going to mix this. Whoops, that's not supposed to boil. Yikes. Good thing y'all aren't eating this. Okay. All right, so there's my yolks. And normally, like I said, most custards you mix sugar in here and you pour your cream in here. But I did it, and so I tried it because I was like, I really wanted to eliminate those honey granules. What you're wanting to do, if you're going to eventually want to mix these two together. But if you put these eggs in this hot milk, you're going to end up with egg drop soup or something similar. So what you want to do is add just a tiny bit of the cream to your eggs, stirring constantly while you do it. This is tempering your eggs. Okay. Tempering your eggs. Now, when you get them there, now we're just going to add our pumpkin, and it's 1/3 cup of pumpkin to our milk mixture. Going to add our eggs to our milk mixture with no fear of curdling here because we've tempered those eggs. And then 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. That was about 1/2, don't you think? Okay. Ah, well, that lost a custard right there. Okay, so now I'm going to set this aside. And I need my pressure cooker. And this is the 4-liter pressure cooker, which should do for this. Yesterday I did it in the 6 and the 8 when I did a double recipe, but I think this will do the single. Oh, I forgot my syrup, didn't I? That would not be good. That would not taste good at all, to not be sweet at all. So I did a 1/4 cup, and this is our maple flavored agave. Y'all were gonna let me mess that up. Are y'all not reading the recipe now? Okay, so I'm gonna put my trivet in. You certainly could. I do, you know, maybe 1/2 teaspoon of maple flavoring. Her question is, if you have just the regular agave, could you use that and maple flavoring? Yes, absolutely. I've not found good maple flavoring though. Have you found? It's all imitation now. I used to buy it years ago. Yes, I think you could use maple syrup. Yep. Absolutely. In fact, I think that's what the original recipe called for. But we carried the agave, you know, maple flavored agave, so it works. All right. And I think you could certainly, with leaving out the sugar, the honey granules, this made a lot less custard. And so it's not, but it's very rich with all that cream and half and half. So you don't need a lot, but you could certainly add more custard to these dishes, make fewer custards. So we're just going to divide it between the 4 cups. Okay. That was our, what's in there? Oh, our spaghetti squash. Okay. So now what we're going to do with our custard cups here is we're going to cover them with foil. And you want to kind of crimp them around the edge. And I like these little Corningware ramekins pretty nicely because they actually have a little lip, and so it makes it easier to cup that foil around the edge there. Okay, and now all we're going to do is sit our custard cups inside the trivet. Maybe a 4-liter won't work. It won't. Hate the thought of using an 8 or 10 for this little bit. Maybe I'll make it work. There we go. And then you just pyramid stack them. I think we're going to be able to get that one in there. I'm hoping. There we go. I think that's working. Okay. Oops. Close the lid. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, okay. All right. And now we're just going to bring it up to pressure and let it cook for, what does it say, 10 minutes? And then we'll remove it. We'll let it naturally release, remove it, let the steam escape, and then we will cover them then and cool them, chill them if you want to. Yep. Here's what the little one looks like. Now we'll make our whipping cream. I'm going to make a cinnamon whipped cream to go on top. This is the whipped cream maker. Oh, where am I? Would you see if you can find me a... Yeah. I just saw them. Okay, so these are our whipped cream makers by ISI. They'll hold a pint of whipping cream. And what I love about this, your kids will love this because it's like the nasty squirters, except it's the real good stuff. And then the other cool thing is you can flavor this however you want. I've done lemon, I've done chocolate, I've done almond, I've done all kinds of flavors of whipped cream. But to go on the pumpkin custards, I thought I would do a cinnamon whipped cream. The little vanilla. Maybe over in that drawer there's some. I know I just saw them. And then a couple of tablespoons of agave nectar. You can certainly use honey here. But I like to use the agave because it goes into, I know it's going to mix up very well instead of settling to the bottom. Yeah. And then we're going to use a little half teaspoon of cinnamon. Okay. Now, make sure your gasket's in place. Put your lid on. I like to give it just a little shake just to make sure the syrup, or especially if I use honey, I'll really just kind of shake it upside down to make sure everything is all mixed up.
You didn't silence your phone.
I did. That's my alarm to remind me to do something at 1 o'clock.
Well, there you
So
go.
I guess alarms aren't silent. I didn't know that.
Here you go.
Okay. And now all we're going to do is put our cartridge on. And shake it up. Okay. Instantly whipped. Take our cartridge off. Put our little spout on. There we go. Where's my little pump and grind? My new little gadget. I love this. I can't wait. Kind of a joke around my house. I don't do pretty. I just really don't. So when things help me do pretty, I get real excited about it. This is one of those. So we're just going to add a little squirt of whipped cream. And a little dash of, you can put your favorite. I put cinnamon in here. Gives you a little shot. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? So now you can just be pretty without, I would always like do the spoon and then this big hunk would pour. I'm like, okay, how do I dig that off? So now you can do pretty. How about that? So you're going to love those custards, I think. So nice. So easy to do things like that in the pressure cooker. They just don't scorch. They don't burn. They're just really, really nice. So, all right. Which, by the way, these make great Christmas presents. If you really don't know what to get somebody. Once you whip the whipped cream, it stays good for several weeks in the refrigerator. So, you can't leave it out. If you leave it out, of course, at room temperature, it'll, spoil. But, nitrogen. Yep. And then, now once you use the cartridge, that's it. So, but the cream lasts in the refrigerator for quite a while. Yeah. My boys were playing paintball at the time when we first started carrying those, and they were like, "Oh wow, man, how far would this shoot?" So yeah, so just don't let them see you do it, and they'll never know. So anyway, so that's the little pumpkin custards. She what?
Oh, I got you.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. We're moving on. Just now caught it.
Oh, wow, I just totally missed that.
Don't worry about it. We're not repeating it. We're being filmed. All right. So we've got our spaghetti squash over here. Let's look at our pumpkin. Nope.
How long is it supposed to go?
10 minutes.
Okay, I got it.
Okay. All right. Let's look at our pumpkin. Let me get the cutting board. Let's see. This is funny. Not going to happen. We're just going to do it like this. I have done this before. There we go. All right, so now we just want to lay it open, and we'll just scrape the seeds out. My watch battery died, so I have no idea what time it is. How am I doing?
You're after yeah, your alarm went off at 1, so it's after 1.
Oh, that's scary because I'm supposed to be done at 1.
Yes.
I thought I had cut so many recipes out of here that we were going to be so done on time, early even. Sorry. All right, we're almost there.
Yeah, all of a sudden I thought, oh, this class must go till 2.
I thought we were like, wow, we're just clipping along here. Time flies when you're having fun. Sorry, guys. I didn't think I had that many recipes in the class. Okay. So now, all we want to do now with this,
What do you need?
The blender. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is take and puree my pumpkin. Where'd my spoon go? Oh. Just take scoops of it. Just scoop it out now. Very easy. I mean, it just comes right away from the skin. This is the kitchen assistant, the blender attachment, which goes here. If you need a little liquid in there, you can always put a little liquid in, but usually once it gets some pureed, it just purees right up. I actually did about half of it full yesterday, and it did just fine. Maybe it likes more. This is the pumpkin. I'm just pureeing it.
Pumpkin.
So it's nice and creamy. Huh? No, I probably won't get to the smoothie. Y'all just have to use your imagination. Or I'll do it after the class. Those of you that want to stay can stay. Y'all don't want to miss the cookies and the dessert. So, sorry.
Or you can go ahead and go, and you can just leave the custard.
Okay, so there's now my pumpkin puree. So cheap, so easy to do yourself. You really, really can do this. Now what do you do with this? Once you've got the pumpkin puree made, then you can freeze it, which I do some. And what I typically do, if I'm going to freeze it, then I'll freeze it in the amounts that I like to use in my recipe. If I use a cup in a muffin recipe, then I'll freeze some. And I just do the quart Ziploc bags. Oh, I thought there was one in here. I thought you said there was another one. Is there not another one, Sharon? Anyway, this was completely full. And then I just, once I get my measured amount in here, and I usually label it, then I'll just lay it flat, and then just stack them in the freezer. But Ashley, will you hand me that on top of the dehydrator? But I'm going to tell you what's really, really cool is dehydrating it, pureeing it just like that. This is a cup of pumpkin. And now what I can do with this, that I've dehydrated it, you can see it's very dry. I can take my Tri-Best, or if I want to do a lot at a time, but I like to measure it out, however much I want to use in the recipe. And now what I can do, make sure my hands are very dry, hang on. You don't want to get any moisture on this because you want it very dry. You're going to love this. So now, it was overnight. I put it in the dehydrator yesterday, or right before I left last night. Just stuff it down in here. And it needs to be really dry to powder. Man, I'm glad I cut out like 3 recipes. Aren't y'all? Okay. So now I've got this fabulous pumpkin powder. Do you remember how much pumpkin I told you this is? It's a cup. So now, look how little space that is in. 1/8 of a cup of powder is equal to a cup of pureed pumpkin. So you're saying, okay, what do I do with that? Add water, about 1/2 to 3/4 a cup of water, and this will rehydrate into a cup of mashed pumpkin. You do 1/8 of a cup of pumpkin powder is about a cup of pumpkin, mashed pureed pumpkin. So now all you're going to do, and if you're going to cook with it, just rehydrate it with warm water, about 1/2 to 3/4 of a cup. Start with 1/2, let it sit there a few minutes and see how thick it is. If you need to thin it a little bit, then add a little more water. But you're better off needing to add more water than needing to add more powder, okay? But it'll rehydrate right back up to what will look like pureed pumpkin, okay? If you want to get me some of the apples, I'll go ahead and show them how to do the apples. I do apples the same way, yes? I'm sorry, what? In Ziploc bags. My answer to all life's problems. Ziploc bag.
Down in a 6-gallon bucket with a gimbal.
Yep. So there's my pumpkin powder. And I just put it in the baggie, and I've got 1/8 of a cup equals a cup of pumpkin powder. I mean a pumpkin puree. And then I just store my bags in, like she said, I put my fruity things in one bucket and my vegetable things in another bucket. Another great thing is your apples, which I'm going to show you how to. These are actually ones without the peel. Cucumber powder is delicious. Yes, dry your cucumbers and then powder it, and then use a couple of tablespoons. A recipe's in my red cookbook for a creamy cucumber dip. Outstanding. Outstanding. You want to move that? Just take it over there. So here's my apple powder. This, I sprinkle it sometimes inside bread. Now this will really absorb the moisture in the air really quickly, so you want to get it in something covered. But and then my kids will sprinkle this on their oatmeal. Okay, you do not need to buy those packets of oatmeal, that apple cinnamon. Just have them do this. Make a pot. It's so easy. I did want to show you real quick how to do your apples. And then actually the brownies and the cookies are basic brownie and cookie recipes. I wasn't going to make them anyway, but they're all done for you, so we will serve them. But let me show you, I do want to show you the wonderful apple peeler corer slicer. It is fabulous. The old ones used to clamp to your countertop. This one actually has a suction. Very, very easy to use. I still got to deal with this this spaghetti squash. Do they need to see you make the... Never mind.
What?
The caramel? Possibly. What's in there? I've even forgotten. Oh, okay. That's okay. They've already... But once you see how much, I mean, that's a cup of pumpkin, will help you understand why dehydrated foods cost so much. It's because you're getting a lot of food there. So once you take that moisture out, there's a lot of food there. Okay, so now let's look at our handy dandy apple peeler. Actually, you can peel or not peel. That is the question. However you want your apples is how you do it. If you want the peel on, you just let this lever, whoops. There we go. Leave this lever forward, and I'll show you both ways. Okay, so peel, we're going to do peel off first. So all I do is pull this lever like that, slide the arm towards me. I'm going to push the apple on the spokes there, and then just start turning, and it will peel it, core it, and slice it. And you just pull it off, and now all you have to do for slices is make 2 little cuts, and there's your slices. Isn't that fabulous? And don't throw this away. Dehydrate it and use it for apple powder. Okay? Now, if you want the skin on, which is what I do most of the time, Because like I said earlier, I don't peel much of anything. You're going to pull this little lever back, take that over, and then that way it disengages the peeler. And now you've got your peel on. Okay? And then you just make your 2 little cuts for your slices. And if you want dice, then you just dice them. Okay? So that's this little gadget. Love it. So makes chopping apples very easy. All right. Go for it, girl.
I'm going to make the caramel sauce for the brownies. Turn myself back on. I'm going to make the caramel sauce for the brownies. This is from Judith's cookbook, Shamrock and Peach. It actually comes from, I think it's in your handout. We talk about it. See what I need. This is what I need. It comes from one of her cupcake recipes, and she makes this salted caramel sauce. Sorry. Is that better? So I just add my honey granules and a little bit of water just to help that dissolve. I'm just going to stir this until it starts to kind of brown a little bit and melt. This is the salted caramel sauce that goes with the brownies. And then one thing about the recipe in the cookbook is in the directions she has you whip in the butter 1 tablespoon at a time, but in the actual cookbook the butter is not listed in the ingredients list. So she and I found that typo together when we were making these for the tea, and but I figured it out. It was about 4 tablespoons, so we've given you that measurement right there. All right, and I'm just going to mix this in. Will you open up your salt shaker thing? So your white lid? No. I want the coarse one.
Okay. Open it up. Okay.
Like unscrew it. I need the coarse.
And while Ashley's making the caramel sauce, I'm going to make the icing for the pumpkin cookies. The little pumpkin cookies that we're going to serve you, they are, and like I said, the cookie recipes are all there in your book. They're basic cookie recipes. I didn't think you needed to see me mix up cookie dough. How many have never mixed up cookie dough? Yeah, see, that's, oh, come on. It's easy. Easy, easy. Okay, so I'm going to just make the icing here for the pumpkin spice cookies. And the original recipe called for just water, but I love pumpkin and orange. So you could totally just use water here instead of the orange juice if you want to. So I'm going to do the zest for 1 orange. I think I'm liking Lars' ways more and more. See, I always did it that way, and when Lars was here, he did it this way. And I asked him why he did it this way, and he said so he could see where he's been on the orange. So it does make it a little more visual. Now that I've gotten used to it, but at first, when I first tried to do it, I felt so odd doing it.
You could certainly use the finely ground salt if you wanted to, but something about the coarse the chunks of coarse ground salt, and the caramel is quite yummy.
Orange squeezer. Then I'm just going to use the juice of an orange to thin this icing out. And those of you that have never tried the powdered sucanat, that's what I'm using here for the icing. And I actually really prefer to do it in a blender. But since my blender had pumpkin in it, didn't plan that out very well. Because it really whips it up and makes it very smooth. Because I find that it's better if you let it sit for just a few minutes and then stir it again. And then if you want, you can add just a tad of orange extract. Not a lot, because it'll overpower it. Okay? And you just want a nice, spreadable consistency here. Y'all had the cookies? Now those basic peanut butter cookie recipe and a basic oatmeal cookie recipe, just think about it. Put an apple in it. The oatmeal cookie had dried apples and the peanut butter cookie had a grated apple. And I will tell you that one apple about this size is the half a cup. So don't worry about measuring. It's about that much. So one was oatmeal and one was peanut. Oh, you hadn't had the peanut butter yet? Did you serve them both at the same time? Huh? Okay, she's fixing to serve the peanut butter. Okay. I thought you had them both at the same time. So no, that's okay. So that was the apple oatmeal, the dried apple oatmeal that you had. And then now I'm going to make the pumpkin ones for you. This is the peanut butter,
Yes.
and this is the oatmeal.
Okay, yep.
So they're still having the oatmeal?
Right.
Okay. All right. These are my little pumpkin spice cookies. These are more like a little cake than a cookie, but they're very delicious. And they actually hold very well, and I did ice them when I made them the last time and stored them iced, and they were very nice. I think the icing actually made a moistness there. I think that could be a little thinner. I find that the sucanat, the powdered sucanat, really absorbs the liquid.
Honey granule.
The honey granule, sorry. Okay. These are actually our little children decorator. I actually could use a bigger spoon. I thought it was smaller opening there.
Actually, this works really good.
Oh, to just dump it?
Mm-hmm. It's that running.
Brownies are over there somewhere.
Okay.
They're in the foil. So now all I'm going to do is, there's another opening.
I don't know where you got that from.
Hang on. Should be another. Sorry, I'm looking for my little tip and I only see the small one. You know
Only
what?
This one.
Huh?
There's only this.
Yeah, that's small too. Well, I'm going to just do this. This is going to be. tricky. Whoops, somebody's going to get a lot. There's a bigger spout, we just can't find it.
Did you make enough for everyone to have?
Half, yeah. Yeah, let me go over that real quick. On the apple butterscotch brownies that we're going to serve, I used spelt. On the apple oatmeal cookies, the dried apple oatmeal cookies that you've had, I used Ezekiel mix. The Ezekiel mix flour mixes very well with oatmeal cookies. You could do spelt there. The first time I made them, I did spelt. On the apple peanut butter cookies, I did spelt. And on the pumpkin spice cakes that you're about to have, I did soft wheat. Okay? And the apple butterscotch brownies, I did spelt. Spelt really, really works very well with your cookies. And the Ezekiel mix works really nicely. Okay? So now we're just going to top the little pumpkin spice cookies with a little cranberry. And you want to hand me the brownie pan, and I'll show them the... Last year, when I was getting ready for this class, one of my favorite snacks is apples and peanut butter. Well, I don't know if you've ever made the peanut butter brownie recipe that's in the red cookbook. If you haven't, you ought to. It's amazing. And so last year when I was getting ready for the class, I thought, why couldn't I just put some chopped apples in that peanut butter brownie? And so it's delicious. So try that peanut butter brownie recipe in my red cookbook. It's the peanut butter brownie recipe. And this year I was flipping through a magazine and I saw a recipe for apple butterscotch brownies. And it basically was my butterscotch brownie recipe with apples in it. And that's kind of like even the oatmeal cookie recipe. I was reading a cookbook or a magazine, and she said, you know, it was apple season, it was fall. She thought, why not put apples in it instead of raisins, you know? So think of places that you can put these apples, and I think you just could do well. I'm even wondering if grated apples in your pancakes would be really, really delicious. What was that you were telling me about somebody did with pancakes the other day?
They used coconut oil in place of the oil in the pancake recipe and added chocolate chips.
Yeah, used coconut oil instead of the olive oil in the recipe in my book and put chocolate chips in there. Said it was amazing.
And used the Ezekiel flour.
And pumpkin or whatever would be just delicious. Yes. Oh my. Pancake. Oh wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, these are the butterscotch brownies with the fresh apples, and it was so nice yesterday. That's not going to work. It was so nice yesterday. Hey Ashley, could you get me a plastic knife? It was so nice yesterday using the apple peeler core when I was chopping all these 3 cups of apples. Really made it go very, very fast. No, with the Ezekiel flour. And with the spelt, I really don't either. I just used it exactly like the recipe called for. So now we're going to just serve the butterscotch brownies. They're good just all by themselves. And actually a secret to getting them to slice nicely, and I should have done this, is to put them in the refrigerator so they're firm. I used Ezekiel flour on the peanut butter ones. No, on the apple oatmeal, the first ones that you had. But when I made these brownies to try, they're a little, I think the flavors meld even better after they're cool, because they were a little bland to me when hot, you know, which I like hot brownies, but they were a little bland. But Ashley had just done the tea with Judith, so we thought, wow, that would be so delicious to serve the butterscotch brownies with a little bit of her butterscotch caramel or her caramel sauce. The peanut butter brownies, these are in your handout. First one never comes out very nicely. Man, it feels like Saturday to me today. I'm just having a... Well, these aren't coming out very well at all. So there's our little butterscotch brownies. They're almost like a cake. And then we'll just take a little bit of the butterscotch or caramel sauce. And we'll serve over it. Like I said, they're good without it, but I think this will make it even more delicious. So while they're getting the rest of the cookies and the tarts you had, or the custards, the little mini pumpkin custards, how did you like those? Yeah, did you ever think of adding pumpkin to your custard? All right, so ladies, here are these. All right, and then while they're serving that, then we'll get the pumpkin. I'll show you the spaghetti squash and let you go ahead and get up. We'll dismiss the class, and then I'll just serve, you know, I'll put the sauce on it as you, I don't want everybody to have to just sit here. No grease. Yeah, you don't have to ever grease the USA pans. They really, truly are non-stick. Well, my partner told me that I had to be on time today because he had somewhere to go and he was filming. And I said, no problem. I've cut all these recipes out, no problem. I'm really shocked. I really, really am. Told him how I was learning to not do so much in the class. Oh, well, so much for that theory. Okay, so now the spaghetti squash, we'll just cut it open. Ouch. Now what you're going to do, you're going to take a grapefruit spoon or a serrated spoon of some kind. And just scrape the seeds out. Okay. And you're going to be tempted to keep scraping because the squash itself is kind of stringy, so it's a little difficult to see where you are. Ouch. You know where the seeds end and the squash actually starts? Ouch, that's a little hot. I can't pull that up. So what I did is I just took my squash and inverted it. We had this for dinner last week or the week before. And then see, it's like noodles. But y'all have all done this. I thought I was going to show y'all something so cool and different. And this feels like it could be a little more done. But you'll get the drift. So there's like little spaghetti noodles. Isn't that wild that God would create such a thing. Okay. So now we'll just put some meat sauce over this. And I'll get the other one cleaned, and I'll just start. Y'all can come up and get this when you're ready. Which I didn't tell you about the dehydrator. I love the dehydrator. Drying apples. I mean, if that's all you ever did in it, it's amazing, but you can do so much more than dried apples. But it is a great way to take advantage of all the apples coming in the fall. Any of y'all have babies? We'll see you next week in the baby food class. My daughter Abigail has been working real hard for the last year and a half feeding her baby healthy food that she's been making herself. Okay. This is so funny to me. Okay. My sons actually really liked it. They ate several helpings. It's very filling without being stuffing, you know, like noodles can be. Pasta, when you overeat pasta, it's kind of like, oh, that was really heavy. All right, I'll get the meat sauce and put over this, and then we'll just serve it. Did that meat sauce get heated? It did, didn't it? Huh? Okay. All right. Hey, Maggie, could you bring me some of those little cups that y'all are using? The little. Actually, bring me those. Yes, those. Isn't that pretty, though, the colors, how bright yellow that squash is? Okay. All right. If y'all want to come up and get your the squash here, that'll give you time. That'll give you a chance to move. Oh, let's see. I need forks. Hey, Ashley, could you bring me the fork basket over here? Or do y'all have forks at your plate? And it, like I said, it feels like it's not quite done, so it could have gone. I was scared to do it 15. I did it 13, so I think 15 would be good. It's really hot, so be careful. Sorry about running late today.
Oh, that's never a problem.
Well, I'm determined I'm going to be on time. Yeah. I think there's a seed in yours.
So, Sue, I always hear about tomato sauce on that. Have you ever done it with Alfredo?
I haven't. Sorry. Let me get you another one. I haven't, but one thing that I read online, someone said that they didn't like Alfredo with it. Okay.
Spaghetti squash is pretty good.
Huh?
On cooking time, it's pretty
Yeah. Like I said, I think it could go a little bit more. Now, did they get all their desserts?
Thank you.
So you got the brownies, the cookies, the pumpkin custards. What else? Which was your favorite?
We heard a lot of mms and ahs.
The oatmeal? You can't beat an oatmeal cookie.
How much honey granules did you say you left out of the custard? Thank you.
Man, I can't remember now. I want to say it was about 1/3 of a cup.
Yeah, okay.
Might have been a fourth. Might have been a fourth.
And that was too sweet. So maybe
Yes.
if I wanted
It was a
sweeter,
1/4 of a cup and then 3 tablespoons of the syrup. So when I took it out, I did bump the syrup up to 1/4 of a cup. So, but you could certainly put, I don't know that, I mean, really, it was disgustingly sweet. Oh, okay. So, anyway. All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed the class today and that you all love the food.
Yeah, thank you.
I love cold weather because it gets us all in the mood to cook, doesn't it? All right. Thank you so much for coming. See you later. See you next time at the Bread Beckers. I'm good. How are you?